You start looking at how we've just been lied to for decades about what to eat, and we've been hurt by that a lot. I mean, extremely hurt, extensively hurt, and continue to be hurt and profited on our misery and illness. And in fact, selling is the thing that makes us sick and miserable, and then profiting off that sickness and misery. That's truly sick that people do this, but they do. And they do it by the millions. And so it's affecting billions of people around the world. It's absolutely disgusting. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. Sorry, running a little late, just back in Seattle, and had a bit of technical issues with all my stuff here. So lighting's a bit weird, and everything else just took a bit of time to come back. But thank you all for joining. Hopefully we can get everything answered that people need to be answered. So there are a couple. Let me see here. There's just let me see. I think there was a few questions earlier. I'm just going to try and scroll back and see where it is. So anyway, this is for December 21st in America, December 22nd in Australia and that part of the world. And we'll start with this one. This is the first super chat. I think there might have been ones before that, but this is the first one that's popping up for me. So this is from Lively Lioness. Thank you very much for the super chat. 2 years carnivore on a calorie deficiency, started eating to fullness this month and gaining rapidly. I'm scared. I want to have faith that I'll lose weight. So it depends on what you're putting on, basically. I mean, you can put on fat, and that will make you gain weight, but you can also put on muscle, and you will also gain weight. So it does matter about that. Also, remember that if you're eating in a caloric deficit for too long, if you have too much of a deficit for too long, you will slow down your metabolism. And then when you start eating more to what your body requires or demands or is asking for, then you'll gain weight, because your body doesn't know that you're on a diet. Your body doesn't know that you want to lose weight. Your body is taking your inputs and creating outputs from that. So your body is very fiscally responsible. If you get your hours cut at work, the last thing you want to do is start blowing out the credit cards, right? You want to budget, you want to restrict, you want to be very frugal. Your body does that as well. And so your budget's going to be reduced. You have less energy coming in, you have less nutrients coming in, you're going to have less going out. Simple as that. And the thing is, though, is that when you do get your hours picked back up and you do have more money coming in, it doesn't just go, okay, yeah, great, let's go party now. It says, well, I never want that to happen again. The next round of layoffs could be right around the corner. We need to save. And so you're going to keep your energy outputs low, and it's going to start putting money in the bank, right? Which is fat. And so you can do that as well. And so that's why people do these yo-yo diets, where they starve themselves, they depress their metabolism, and they lose weight, but then they stop losing weight, and they aren't able to maintain that because it's not sustainable. And then they start putting weight back on, or even just go back to how they were eating before, or maybe just slip a little bit, and their body goes, okay, no, we need to store this. So it can also be hormonal issues as well. So that's the main one, is that there are metabolic issues, that you're depressing your metabolism when you're restricting. And so there's also a difference between eating to fullness and eating to what I think is your body telling you to stop. So people say, oh, you want to eat maximally until you just want to vomit and you just feel stuffed. And never do that. Ever, never, ever, ever do that. You just eat meat when it tastes good. And if your body's telling you this tastes good, that means it's rewarding you for getting those nutrients in. It means it wants those nutrients, right? If they are the right nutrients. There are things that taste good and aren't good for you, of course. It's highly palatable food that you have food scientists that, for some reason, they decided to use their massive brain power to figure out how to make something horrible for you taste really good, so you keep eating it in an addictive manner instead of actually making something good and healthy for you. I mean, that's already been done. That's just a steak, but that's what they're doing. And so they're making things taste good even if they're not good for you. And it's addictive as well. So if you're just eating actual real food that's really good for you and it tastes good, keep eating it, right? If you're just eating fatty meat and it tastes good, keep eating it. You'll get to a point where it just stops tasting good. You don't have to be full. You don't have to be stuffed. You should not feel gross. You should not feel nauseous. You should not feel physically overwhelmed. There should never be a negative interaction between you and food. You don't want to have a negative relationship with food. You want to have a very positive relationship with food. Food is good for you. And so you want that good, healthy, positive relationship as well. So, sorry, random package. I don't know what the hell that is. Anyway, so that's what you want to do. You just want to eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good, and you want to stop then. So don't. So there's a couple things in there that I don't know exactly what you mean by that, and so I would just say that. But if you have been doing sort of everything right in the sense that you're just eating fatty meat and only drinking water, not having anything else, no artificial sweeteners or anything, and you are just eating until things stop tasting good and you're getting this, those are some other reasons. You can depress your metabolism and gain weight that way, but that levels off once what I tell my patients that are trying to lose weight is like, I don't want you to depress your metabolism. I don't want you to be on a diet where you're restricting. I want you to encourage your metabolism. I want to beef your metabolism up. And so, you eat as much as your body asks you for, and your metabolism goes up, and say, hey, we don't need all this excess fat. We don't need to store and maintain. We're not in a famine. We're in a time of excess. So we don't need to store all this stuff. So, we'll let some of it go now. We'll let most of it go. And that's what you want to do. You want to stimulate your metabolism to go up, not down. And that can take some time, I mean, look at Kelly Hogan. She gained weight for 6 months, but her health was so much better. She said, okay, I'm just going to stick with it. And then, something happened. It was like seemingly overnight. And then she just started dropping her weight. And so there's hormonal reasons for that as well. Generally leptin. If you test your leptin and that's elevated, it's called leptin resistance. And that can be very difficult to lose weight. But on a carnivore diet or any ketogenic diet, you just have to get rid of carbs really, because insulin blocks leptin and can precipitate leptin resistance. That, once you start eating that way, your leptin starts going down. When you get that down into a more normal level, that's when you start losing a lot more weight as well. So it's multifactorial, but that's where I would start anyway. Okay. So can't bring up the super chat, but it's just been sort of, it's a super chat from Jenna Westra, Gena Westra. Thank you very much for the super chat. They say, I've been carnivore for almost 3 years and I have geographic tongue. Is there any hope of getting rid of it? There is nothing on Dr. Google that helps. It just says they don't know what causes it. I've never actually heard of that. So I don't know. I'm going to just look up what that is and see what that is. Okay. So it's an inflammatory condition on the surface of the tongue that causes smooth red irregularities and things like that. Okay, so well, any inflammatory process can be improved by lowering your inflammation and improving your immune system. So presumably, if that indeed is the underlying cause is your body reacting and your immune system reacting in an inappropriate fashion that's now affecting your tongue, that could very well improve. It's been 3 years. If it hasn't helped in 3 years, I'd be a bit more skeptical of that, especially if you've been sort of pure meat and water. But I don't know. I don't know if you've had any sort of improvements. If you have, then that's great. But after 3 years, if it stayed the same, I wouldn't really expect it to get much better just from what you're eating. But you never know. It could be that there's something else underlying that is affecting your health, and you can continue to improve that, and eventually that will clear up. But generally, if this is just sort of an inflammatory underlying thing, you're reacting to something that you're eating, you get rid of that thing in a few weeks, a few months, your body can heal from that, or at least start to heal. And so if you haven't really started to see any improvement in 3 years, and you're just doing just meat and water, and if you're not just doing meat and water, and not just doing just red meat and water, give that a try, because it could be that you're reacting to something much more subtle, and it's enough to continue on with this issue. So I would try that. But if you have been doing just pure meat and water, certainly pure red meat and water, getting enough fat, and you haven't even seen any improvement after 3 years, then I would be doubtful that this is going to be addressed with just the diet itself, and there'll be something else causing it, unfortunately, and which is the case. I mean, there are other things in the world that makes us sick. It's just a major one is eating poison and not getting enough proper nutrition.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying this replay of my YouTube Live. If you'd like to catch a live version and ask your own questions, please go to the next scheduled one, usually every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. All right, see you then, and please enjoy the rest of the Q&A.
Okay, so this one's from Sunday Creative. Thank you very much for the super chat. My mom is 76 years old, 167 centimeters, 52 kg, high risk of Alzheimer's. Recently started keto. Great. HDL, LDL from 2.6 to 3.1, 3.1. Is that good? Her B12 is 8 times higher. Jesus, at 4,427. CRP is 0.9. AST is 36. ALT is 40. Those are liver markers. How to reduce B12. So look, it sounds like it's supplementing. I mean, I don't think you can possibly get that high of a B12 naturally unless you're just only eating liver. And even then would be pretty surprising. The amount that you want to get between about 800 and 1200 for Australian numbers. And seems to be from Australia. And so I would, B12 is water soluble. And so, just drinking water will help flush this out. And then if she's eating a lot of liver, you can reduce that, certainly. Just go just to red meat and water, or whatever meat and water, and just skip the organs for a little bit. I don't think that that's the only thing. You just don't get numbers that high unless you're taking a supplement or way too much of a supplement, and maybe getting injections, large injections on a weekly basis, sort of thing. And because when your B12, the B12 range in Australia is 139 or 140 or so to 650 or so, right? Depends on the lab, depends on the area, because it's just an average for that area in that lab. And that's low. That's because most people in Australia are low. And so I commonly see people with their B12 under 400, and under 400 studies have shown that you can actually get nerve damage, get demyelination of your axons. And so they don't fire as readily, and they don't have as fast of conductivity. So that's an actual deficiency. So this is 10 times what you often see people in Australia with a sort of a normal standard diet would be. So you're not getting that just from keto. I mean, especially recent keto. So I would be shocked if that were a true and accurate number. So first of all, a test is only as good as a retest, and that could be just wildly inaccurate. So just get it tested again. It could be a very different number. If that number is that high, there's some sort of supplement in her and something she's taking that has a ton of B12 in it, and you just need to cut those out and just go back to eating normal, regular food. Zeta CHF 5.0, I think, 6 months, beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, chronic parasite, blastocytis hominis. Okay. Despite antibiotics in the past, bloating, low energy, iodine, and oregano oil help, but irritating. So a chronic parasite infection, being being on a carnivore diet and beefing up your immune system and eating as clean as possible and clean meats as possible. And, I'm a big fan of the BBB&E, but it's not as clean as you can go. The best thing you can do is just grass-fed and finished beef and lamb. And that's the absolute best thing you can do, besides like venison, but you might have some parasites in venison. So you have to cook that well done, which isn't always what you want to do, but for taste reasons. But there's going to be just a bit of sugar, a bit of preservatives and things like that generally in bacon, which is typically fine for most people. You'd be able to handle that pretty well. But if you're trying to really optimize things perfectly, that's where you go. You go to just beef or lamb, and maybe just grass-fed and finished beef and lamb. That's going to improve your immune system dramatically, and so you'll be better able to fight off different infections like parasites, etc. But if you continue to have a chronic parasite infection, I think that's when you go and you get medicine. So not antibiotics, but antiparasitics. And I'm sure that's likely what you meant. And but they are different, just so people know. And but getting with a parasitologist or infectious disease specialist to help you clear that, because a lot of people and animal in the wild do have some parasites, but they can be horribly harmful. And sometimes they can be it's just something your body's used to doing. I mean, there are people that actually give themselves parasites because they have such severe allergies, and it's thought that, well, it is the same part of the immune system that gives you allergies that is actually supposed to attack parasites. Which thought in this uber clean way of living that we have now, just a completely sterile environment. We don't let kids play in dirt or anything like that anymore, and it's just everything's clean, and disinfected and bleached and all that sort of stuff. That your immune system is there for a reason, and it sort of just goes a bit haywire and starts attacking you with allergies. That's a theory anyway, and there are people that then go to developing countries and they expose themselves to things that will give them parasites, and they have crippling allergies, and then they're gone. So you never know, but parasites can be horrible. At the same time, they can absolutely kill you and do horrible things to you. And so if you are struggling with that, then I think, and you're eating a great diet and your immune system is very strong as a result of that, then I think you need to go and get medical attention and sort that out with more antiparasitics, and get a specialist, a parasitologist, to help you with that. And good luck with that. And Bielecki, thank you very much for the super chat. What is causing my reflux? I only eat BBB and E. Well, it could be a number of things. Quite often people's reflux improves on a carnivore diet or even just ketogenic diet. And if you are continuing to have reflux, it could be something else going on. You could have gastritis, you could have an ulcer, you could have a hiatal hernia, a structural sort of defect that can sort of press in and cause sort of discomfort and reflux type symptoms. And so it's important to get that checked out and make sure you don't have any of those issues. So if you have just ongoing months and months, years and years of reflux, and it's not really getting better, you need to talk to your doctor and potentially get investigated for that, like a scope down the throat, and see if there's any sort of physical, organic reasons for that, as opposed to just you have a bit of heartburn. So there could be something else going on that you would need to get investigated as well. So I would talk to your doctor and see about getting that investigated. And then Josh Smith asked a question. Thanks for the super chat, Josh. Said, do you own any Bitcoin? I haven't really gone down that path. I mean, I think I own a bit, just because a friend of mine sort of did that sort of stuff, and so I, put a bit of money in that, but I'm almost nothing, and so it's not something I know enough about. But it is interesting how, you have people that find certain things, they go to Bitcoin because they don't like this sort of the centralized, currencies and the control that different governments are trying to place upon them. And so they want sort of a decentralized, currency, and, like gold, it's just, it's just like, though, that has a value, that has an intrinsic value that we've placed on it. And so whatever happens, inflation goes crazy, or they try to, whatever, you have that commodity that you can trade, right? And that has value. And same thing with Bitcoin. It's something that you can sort of decentralize, and people can't sort of lock down on you. And so, when you sort of see that and you sort of have those problems, you start looking at other things like, okay, well, we've been lied to. We're trying to be controlled and corrupted. And, in these ways, what else is going on? You sort of get the wool taken off your eyes, and you start looking for other ways that you've been, hassled about. Same thing with carnivore. You start looking at how we've just been lied to for decades about what to eat. And we've been hurt by that a lot. I mean, extremely hurt, extensively hurt, and continue to be hurt, and profited on our misery and illness. And in fact, selling us the thing that makes us sick and miserable, and then profiting off that sickness and misery. That's truly sick that people do this, but they do. And they do it by the millions. And so now it's affecting billions of people around the world. It's absolutely disgusting. And, they're sending Coca-Cola trucks into Maasai villages every day, and they sell out right away because they have no idea how bad these things are. And their teeth are getting messed up. Their development is getting messed up. They have chronic diseases. They're getting diabetes. And, Dr. Mark Hyman went over there and saw this, and he was sort of horrified. And he spoke to one of the chief of that area. He said, hey, it's not really good, like that stuff can make you sick. It can actually give you diabetes. And he was shocked. He was like, oh my God, I didn't know that. We actually have a really bad diabetes problem. When have the Maasai ever had a diabetes problem when they were just eating meat, milk, and blood? They did not. It did not exist. And, in the big study it took years to do in the late 20s, early 30s, that showed that. And especially the Maasai men who were eating nearly exclusively animal-based. They started adding in some millet seed back then, but that was new to the diet, and it wasn't that much at that point. And then they were extraordinarily healthy, especially the men. And then the women were secondarily, and they didn't eat as much meat and blood. They had more of the dairy and maybe a bit more of the millet or whatever. And then third on that were the female Akikuyu, who were more plant-based, but they had a diverse range of plants that they ate. And the sickest were the Akikuyu men, who ate mostly grains and seeds and things like that. And they were horribly unhealthy. And then you go several decades later, and the Maasai start getting more health issues and chronic health issues and diabetes and heart disease and things like that, because they're eating more plant-based crap, and not even a bunch of processed foods, but just plants, and then they're not good for you. Like, that's the whole point. Now they're even worse. And now, instead of having, beautiful white shiny teeth, perfectly straight, big wide jaws, wisdom teeth all come in, now they're getting crooked teeth, bad dentitions, rotting mouths, and diabetes and heart disease and all these sorts of things. And because they're not only are they eating more plants, but they're also drinking Coca-Cola, which is not their traditional diet. And people say, oh, well, people say the Maasai, they just eat meat. Oh, they're eating all this other stuff. Now they are. But that's not what their traditional diet was. And that's what we're talking about. And when they were eating their traditional diet, that's when they were as healthy as we're talking about. That's the example that we're trying to replicate. And so, people saying, oh, well, they eat all this other stuff too. Yeah, that's the problem. That's why they're getting sick. So then you see that and you say, okay, well, this is bullshit. What else have they been lying to us about? And then you start going to other avenues. And actually had a lot of people sort of just spotted the lies in many different fields, and then said, okay, what else is going on? Then we sort of see other people with that. So there are a lot of people in Bitcoin that sort of find the carnivore sort of way of eating, and it really helps. And there's people in carnivore that go to Bitcoin, but I haven't done that yet myself. But the concept is one that I'm favorable to. It's just, I don't know if it's a good investment. It's quite unstable. It goes up and down. I mean, it used to be when Bitcoin was being used for drugs and assassinations. It was it was actually the most stable currency in the world, and I almost invested then. I actually tried to, but it was just on the dark web, and you couldn't really get it. But it was $6 a coin back then. And it was very, very stable, and I was going to put in like $2,000 and buy sort of like 2 grand worth of Bitcoin, which had been a few hundred coins at the time, and I just couldn't figure out how to do it on the dark web because I didn't want to like go on the dark web and just get everything hacked. And so I didn't end up doing it, and more's the pity, because that would have been a good payday. But no, I haven't really gone down that route yet. Okay, so it's a super chat from Rusty Richards. Thank you very much for that. Isn't a question involved? Maybe down the chain. There's a super chat from Terry. Thank you so much, Terry. She says, no question, just gratitude. Well, thank you very much, Terry. I really appreciate that. It's very kind of you. Joanne Salinas had a question. Friend tried carnivore, did it for 2 months, lost weight, felt good. Then blood work showed ALP down, AST and ALT up, all 3 out of range. Doctor advised against continuing. Should he worry? Look, your liver function test can go off for a lot of different reasons, and AST, ALT, AST can be associated with things like fatty liver, but you generally reverse that. So test is only as good as a retest. You want to sort of retest these things, and so I would just not worry too much about it. In fact, I generally see people's liver function tests improve if they're actually doing a carnivore diet and they're not having a bunch of sweeteners and weird ass things added in there, not drinking alcohol, and things like that, or having sweeteners and sugar and all that sort of stuff, which can also derange your liver function test. Things should get better, and they will get better. So but sometimes you just get a weird aberrant test, and it could be a lot of different reasons for that. I mean, I've gotten blood tests where like my liver function test is perfect, and then just like ALT is just up a bit. And it's like, oh, that's weird. I'll test that again, back to being perfect. So the thing is that was that just my liver just had a funny day, or was that something wrong with the lab, or what? You don't know. So you need to get further data points. And so, the doctor is just going to be paranoid. They don't know about low carb diet. They don't know about carnivore diets. And so they're just going to be paranoid and go like, oh, that can't be healthy. Oh my God, look at this, your liver. Oh, you got to stop. They were going to find something, anything that's just going to be a little bit out of the range for them. They're going to freak out about. So they're losing weight. They're feeling good. They're objectively improving. What are the other bloods doing? Are those bloods getting better? That's what you want to look at. And then, those things are sort of fluctuating. You don't know why they're fluctuating. It's just they're fluctuating. You have to put that into a clinical context. Are they unwell? Are they having problems? No. Okay. So what does that correlate to? It's hard to say. What is that being caused by? Even more hard to say, because you don't know what it correlates to. You definitely don't know what causes it. So I would not freak out. I would just, eat as clean as possible, just fatty whole meat as possible. Don't have anything else, and check it again in a month. See what happens. Check it again a month after that. Liver function tests are cheap, really easy to do. So, you just get that checked and see what's happening. I would be willing to bet that those liver function tests will start coming down. And if they don't come down, things going up, there's something else going on. They have some underlying illness, or they're taking, a bunch of Tylenol and paracetamol and things like that, or taking more than they should, and it's affecting and damaging their liver, or they're having artificial sweeteners or sugar or alcohol or something. But meat is not going to cause that. You can ask your doctor, what can you name a single substance in meat that will damage the liver? Can't say cholesterol, can't say fat. That doesn't cause fatty liver disease. Sugar and alcohol cause fatty liver disease. That's been shown in actual interventional trials, experimental trials, out of University of California, San Francisco, from Robert Lustig. So I wouldn't worry too much. I'd just go and get it checked out and get some more data points. So here's a question from Rusty Richards from previously. Thank you very much, Rusty Richards, for the super chat. 50-year-old male, long history of hypertriglyceridemia. So it's high triglycerides, very poor clearance of triglycerides and remnants. Levels hit 500 to 900 after a fatty meal. Yeah. Okay. But that's going to happen. That's always going to happen after a fatty meal. That's how fat gets taken in. It's taken in by chylomicrons. It goes into your lymphatics and goes through. So that's why you never do a cholesterol test. You never check your triglycerides after a meal. You check it 12 hours after a meal, and then you'll get more accurate depiction. So the question is, any reason to modify a carnivore diet? No, I don't think so at all. You never take you never ever take cholesterol if you're not fasting. There's no point, because because that's how your body absorbs fat from your bowel. It goes through the lymphatics. Everything goes through your portal venous system up to your liver except for fat and the fat soluble nutrients. That's how important fat is that your body's just like, yeah, just get it, just mainline it in. We don't even need it to go through the liver. We don't even need to have it, checked and shopped up. It's just like fat. Yes. Bring it in. Let's go. And so, that comes in the form of chylomicrons, which will show you have very high triglycerides and LDL and all these other sorts of things. It's not accurate. You're not comparing apples to apples, right? Because we don't do unfasted lipid panels and compare that to other people with unfasted lipid panels. We say, no, you have to have a fasting lipid panel for exactly that reason. And so that's what you need to do. So as long as you're getting rid of carbohydrates, sugar, seed oils, alcohol, and you're just eating fatty meat and nothing else, your triglycerides, your fasting triglycerides will start to come down. And stress is a big one too. Stress, high cortisol, bad sleep, high cortisol. These can derange your lipid panels as well. And I've seen a few people in very high stress situations, even on a carnivore diet with higher, low HDL and high triglycerides, and when they were able to sort of address their sleep and address their stress, that all sorted itself out. So it is a bit more complicated than just what you're eating, but that's a major part of it. And you can't test it if you're not fasted. You just have to get a retest. So never test directly after a meal. There's no point in that.
Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, the Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys.
Convert Neo, thank you very much for the super chat. You're the best. Thanks for all you do. Well, thank you. That's really nice of you to say. 2 years carnivore. Now that I feel and look great, can you recommend your favorite form-fitting t-shirt brand? Sorry, not the normal question you get. Well, yeah, I mean, it just depends. Like different t-shirts. I mean, I like the Seattle Seawolves, Seattle Saracens, rugby shirts. I think those are some of the best fitting shirts that I've ever had. Those are great, but they're just called fitted t-shirts, so there's that. For workout gears, as lame as it is, like I really like Lululemon stuff. It's so weird, but my brother started getting them, my best friend Jonathan started getting them, and I was just like, damn, actually those are pretty good material. And now I'm sure that they have like these different sorts of weird, plastic chemicals and things like that soak in your skin that you don't actually want. I haven't looked too deeply into that. I'm sure people in the comments here will tell me how wrong I am to wear these things. You should just stick with cotton probably. But as far as workout ones, I mean, they fit very well. They're very high quality and they last a long time. They're expensive though, but if you treat them well, then you don't buy them again. But apart from that, just the fitted t-shirts of any description made out of cotton, probably a better idea. So it doesn't get all the gunk soaking in. This, I'm sure, probably has stuff that's leaching into my body at the moment that I don't want. But I don't think this is Lululemon, but I don't know. Anyway, it's just an athletic top. But yeah, those are the ones that I've had. And then just, fitted tees, and you just get the size that fits you right. Thomas C, thank you very much for the super chat. My wife and I have been strict carnivore for 5 months now. She is losing lots of hair in the last month. She started collagen peptides. Is there anything else that would help her with hair loss? Well, she, first of all, needs to eat as much as her body's asking for, get enough protein, get enough fat. Quite often when people have hair, skin, or nail issues, they're not eating enough, and they're in particular not eating enough fat. So make sure she's getting enough fat. Make sure you cut out everything else, any sort of artificial sweeteners, stevia, all these sorts of things. Apart from that, you can actually trigger a fallout phase. That doesn't mean that the hair follicle is dying. That doesn't mean that it's not ever going to come back. It just means it now has a fallout phase, and now it's going to go to a regrowth phase. And also check folate. That's another one. Some people, especially women, like something like 44% of women are positive for MTHFR gene mutation. There's a constellation of them. It's not just one. And that can make it so you don't methylate folate properly. You need more of it in your diet. You need more folate in your diet. And just eating muscle meat is not always adequate for those people. And so you just need to check your folate. Check your erythrocyte folate. That's more accurate. So it's in the red blood cells, or RBC folate or erythrocyte folate, if they test for that. Not all labs do. It's a very specialized test. And so, but check the folate anyway. If that's low, start eating liver. Maybe just start eating liver anyway, a couple times a week. And then checking, make sure your B12 and folate are up. If you're with one of these people that just need a bit more help, that can be part of it. But a lot of people will actually trigger a fallout phase. They'll lose weight, they change their metabolism. This triggers a fallout phase. This is especially concerning for women because you have longer hair, and so it's much more noticeable. And it takes a lot longer for that to grow back in. So it can grow back in, generally does grow back in, as long as you don't have any sort of nutrient issues. So you're getting enough meat, you're getting enough protein, you're getting enough fat, and you're not eating anything else, and your folate and B12 are all in good ranges, then I wouldn't worry too much about it. It will grow back in. And that's what happens for the vast majority of people. And I speak to a lot of women that kind of go through that, and they're like, what the hell's going on? This is concerning. And then, it takes months, because it takes a long time for hair to grow back into any decent length. And so all of a sudden it starts coming back in, it comes back in thicker, and they're like, oh, actually, it's fine now. But it can take longer, especially for women to see what the hell's going on, and if it's coming back at all, let alone thicker. But that's generally what people find is their hair comes back better as long as you're eating enough and you're getting all your nutrients. And if you need to add in a bit of liver to do that, then definitely do that. But that's what I would do. Check folate, check B12, add in some liver, and make sure you're getting enough fat and meat, and just be patient. It should come back, and should come back better. Tyler Villasenor. Okay, I don't know how to pronounce that. Thank you very much for the super chat. What's the downside of white rice? What is the cleanest carb? I mean, it depends on what you mean by cleanest carb. They all are sugar. They all break down into sugar. They all break down into glucose in the body, and so that's going to raise your blood sugar. So is that what you want? If you raise your blood sugar, you're going to raise your insulin. That's going to suppress your body's ability to make glucose, glycogen, ketones. So you're going to be out of ketosis. You are going to be in an alternate pathological biochemical state, I think. It's taught as our primary metabolic state. I think that's dead wrong. Because if it were, we'd be one of the few animals on Earth that was our primary metabolic state. So I don't really buy that. But if you're eating straight glucose, you're going to spike your blood sugar quickly, and you're going to spike your insulin quickly. If you eat white rice, you're going to spike it in a more graduated fashion. And so it's just going to be more of a time release capsule where it sort of drips in. So it depends on your goals. It depends on what you're wanting to do. It all breaks down into glucose. It all breaks down into sugar. As far as grains are concerned, they have toxins in them. They have defense chemicals in them. They have lectins in them, because the seed is a plant's baby. A seed, grain, bean, legume, nuts, all of these are seeds. And everything protects its babies more than anything. And the seed is a plant's baby. So that's where you're going to find the highest concentration of toxins. So I would actually think white rice is better than brown rice, except for, some of the fiber may delay and prevent some of the absorption, but there's a lot of, of the germ and things like that, that can cause harm. and more lectins and things like that can be found in there as well. So it's actually, again, it just depends on what you're going for. If you just have to eat carbs, I mean, the cleanest carb out there is just straight glucose, right? But it's going to hit and spike your blood sugar right away. Other ones come with toxins, and but they're more time released fashion, like the white rice. So it's a hard question to answer because there are a lot of downsides of all of these things, and any carbohydrate it's inherently not clean because they're going to spike your blood sugar, they're going to spike your insulin, they're going to derange your metabolism, and they're going to get you out of the metabolic state you want to be in. I think that's a very important metabolic state to be in, and it's going to keep you out of that. Now, whether you eat a lot of protein or whatever, and that transiently brings you out of ketosis, fine. But you certainly don't want to be taking in a lot of exogenous carbohydrates that keep you out of it. And so every carbohydrate. So I think the answer is no. There is no clean carb. All carbs are carbs. All carbs break down into glucose. All carbs will spike your insulin. All carbs will derange your hormones and your biochemistry and your metabolism and be harmful. So other ones come with more toxins, and that makes it worse, obviously. But I don't think you're safe with any of the carbs, really. Somali Pirate, thanks for the super chat. How do you feel about cold showers? Is it worth it? Good question. I haven't looked at the data myself. I've spoken to a lot of people that swear by it. They really like it. Obviously, that's something that Dr. Andrew Huberman is a big fan of, the sort of cold exposure regularly for like 2 minutes at pretty cold temperature if it's a shower, or like 30 seconds if it's like an ice bath dunk, and that helps with dopamine and helps reset your circadian rhythm. So I think that's worth it. I haven't looked into it too close. So like in the morning, sometimes I'll just take a shower and then just turn it on cold and just wait it out. So there, I think there's probably a lot of benefit to it. There's a lot of people that do seem to be benefited by it. There's more and more research and papers coming out suggesting that it's helpful and stimulates these cold shock proteins from the liver that are helpful. Going back and forth between saunas and cold plunges and things like that, from depending on different reports, can raise your growth hormone significantly, raise your testosterone for men significantly, and so might be worth a shot. But I think it would be worth looking at Andrew Huberman's talks on the subject. He goes into great depth of detail, and see what you think, and see if that the studies that he talks about, if they're big enough and properly powered and formulated to give you an answer, and then go with that. I wouldn't be able to tell you definitively one way or the other, but from what I've seen, I get the impression that yes, it is worth it, and it's something that can help and improve your circadian rhythm and hormonal function as well, and dopamine. Grayson Nicholson, thank you very much for the super chat. Hey doc, mom's been in the ER with colitis. I'm very sorry to hear that. She's been sick for 2 weeks up until last something. Okay, this point. Up until recently, I'm going to guess. Have no idea how to help her. Can you share info on that? Well, look, colitis can be called a lot of different things. So ulcerative colitis is something specific. That's an autoimmune issue. You can get colitis and you get an infection. It's just colitis, colonitis, inflammation, so inflammation of the colon. And so there can be multiple means from that. If it's an infection, it's a different etiology than ulcerative colitis. If she has ulcerative colitis, then 100% putting her on a red meat and water diet only should help that. If she has an infection or other sorts of issues, either way, getting her off all fiber is going to help rest her bowel. It's going to help rest her and recover from that. And that's, people get diverticulitis and other sorts of inflammatory infections or issues with the bowel. You put them on a low residue diet, no fiber, or anything like that. That's what a carnivore diet is, and that just rests the bowel, so you don't have to be pushing things through. If it caused a whole bunch of constipation and big blocky horrible stools, that would cause more harm, wouldn't it? So it's not doing that, and we know that. We just are stupid and we forget the things that we know in different contexts and situations. And so we know that that doesn't cause constipation. We know that that just rests the bowel and everything's fine. And then we think other times, oh my God, no, you have to have fiber or else you'll get constipated. You'll have all these problems, intestinal problems. But when you are having intestinal problems, you tell people specifically not to use fiber. So what the hell is that about? Right. So I would still do the same thing. It may not address the underlying cause, but it can certainly help rest her bowel and improve her immune system and reduce inflammation, and hopefully give her a better chance to recover and let her bowel heal. You know, she's in the ER. I don't know if they've admitted her, but you know, if they have, then you don't really have as much control over what she eats, unfortunately. But you know, if she's at home, I would try to encourage her to get onto just fatty meat and water, and that's going to keep her stools soft and her bowel rested, and it's going to allow her to heal. And if it's ulcerative colitis that she's dealing with, the autoimmune condition, then it's doubly important that she go on this, because that will reduce inflammation, will reduce the things that her body's reacting to that are causing the ulcerative colitis. So that should sort itself out in a few weeks and hopefully improve right away if she stops eating those things. And so good luck with that. Hope your mom feels better. Miss E, thank you very much for the super chat. Having a lupus flare, prednisone and line diet only, type 2 diabetes, in remission for 2 months. Hey, that's great. Glucose was 178 after 3 days on meds. Is this dangerous? Well, look, it's you know, that's what happens with the prednisone. That's a steroid, and it's cortisol. Basically, it mimics cortisol. It hits the same receptors as cortisol, right? And so when you are taking that, that's going to have the same effect as cortisol. Cortisol will raise your blood sugar, and so that's what's happening here. And so you can go on sort of blood pressure or blood sugar medication sometimes, or even put on like an insulin sliding scale if they're in the hospital. Is that dangerous? Prolonged hyperglycemia like that is absolutely dangerous. Yeah. And so that's not something that you want, but presumably you're going to not be on prednisone long term, and that's going to come down and come off, and your body will normalize. And so, you know, do tell your doctor that, you know, because that is quite high, and they might want to put you on medication to help lower that while you're taking this. But that is a known complication of putting people on steroids, which is why, you know, you don't want to put people on steroids unless you have to. That's a trouble for neurosurgery. You have someone with a, you know, brain tumor, and they have all this swelling in their brain, and you have to put them on steroids or else they'll die. It's just going to crush their brain. And so you do that, but then it spikes their blood sugar, and that feeds the cancer. And it's just sort of like you're chasing your tail at that point without even realizing it. So you want to get sort of underneath this, get down the base, which you are which is line diet. And I think that's going to address this. And so I think that I think that if you continue on with just a very strict line diet, high fat, red meat only diet, nothing else, no supplements, no sweetened beverages, nothing, that your flare up will calm down fairly quickly, especially with the prednisone. You know, I don't know how long they want you on that, but if you're not flaring, if you're actually feeling better, then, you know, talk to your doctor about weaning off and coming off, because your blood sugar is going crazy. But that's what's going to keep you in remission longer and keep these flare-ups from happening, is just being very strict line diet. So I would just address that. Underlying is just line diet. So do that and talk to your doctor about your blood sugar. Do they want to continue the steroids? You come off the steroids, your blood sugar is going to come down. You know, you have to wean off these things though, especially if you've been taking a, you know, decent whack of this stuff for, you know, more than a week. You know, you're going to need to wean off this stuff, but it's a quick wean, you know, it doesn't take all that long. It can take, days to weeks, depending on how high of a dose you are, depending on a lot of different factors. So you need to talk to your doctor about that. But the best thing for this is to come off the steroids. So if you're in a position to, because you're on a line diet, because the prednisone has done its job, then you can presumably come off of this, and that will just normalize your glucose. And I would try to do that as soon as that's safe, and then continue on with the line diet, and hopefully don't have those flare-ups again. Excuse me. Mona Shabir, thank you very much for the super chat. How long are withdrawal symptoms when starting carnivore? I get to day 5 and feel tremors, get scared to continue, then stop. When do things get better? Pretty much right after that. So generally in a week or two, you'll get a lot of away from a lot of the withdrawals. It depends on what you're withdrawing from. Withdrawing from alcohol is a very different thing than withdrawing from sugar or withdrawing from carbohydrates or the other sorts of random plant toxins. So, people that are dependent on alcohol, and they start getting like the DTs, they start getting the shakes, they can start hallucinating. That can be very dangerous. You need medical help and support if you're detoxing from something like that, or benzodiazepines, things like that. So it's important to know, be clear on what you're withdrawing from. But if it's just food and it's just sugar, that'll get better sort of right after that. Usually about 2 weeks, you'll stop having cravings. Usually after about a week or so, the feelings of withdrawal from sugar, at least, and carb, that will get much reduced. Caffeine as well, generally about a week for the really severe cases. So it depends on what you're withdrawing but yeah, generally about 2 weeks and that's a gradient. So it'll sort of go up and then it'll start coming down, 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 down. Usually it's done by week 2. If we're talking alcohol or benzodiazepines, then you're getting the shakes and things like that, you might actually need medical support to come off of that. And that's something that is available and does help. But being on a ketogenic carnivore diet has been shown to actually help people get through those DTs and need less medication and actually subjectively feel better coming off of that as well. So just something to know about. So Tyler Villa Senior again, thank you very much for the super chat. Please interview Carney economist Stevaden Amos. Okay. Let me just take a picture of that. Okay. I'll write that down. I think we were talking about Bitcoin earlier. So maybe that's what that was. Yeah, interesting. I always like the sort of economics of these things. But yeah, I'll check them out. Thank you for that. OC Pads, thank you very much for the super chat. Did labs yesterday after 2 months Lion, supposed to lower triglycerides, ? Prior 3 years ago at 71 to 248 triglycerides. Now 121 to 301 total cholesterol, and 34 to 52 HDL. Now 72 to 205 LDL now. So the LDL, that's an easy one. You just fast, you just stop eating, your LDL is going to go up. Plain and simple. It's a metabolic state change. It's anything else to do with anything. Your liver, if you're not eating carbohydrates, your liver has to make carbohydrates, has to make blood sugar and glycogen. And so if you don't have that coming in, you have to transport fat from your fat stores up to your liver to make those things through gluconeogenesis. And that's what LDL is. It's a transport molecule. It transports cholesterol around. And so it's taking fat basically from your fat and taking it to your liver. Then you get people that have looked at that, like Nick Norwitz, who's a medical student at Harvard, did his PhD at Oxford. So it's Dr. Norwitz, and he did something like it was called a Oreo cookie challenge, where it just take I think it was like 12 Oreo cookies a day. And what do you know? After a week, his LDL came right down. So are Oreo cookies good for your heart health? I don't think anybody outside of an insane asylum is going to say yes to that. So, we've been looking at LDL wrong. It is not a cause of heart disease, full stop. And so why are we looking at it like it is? The sugar companies blamed it, and then we're still, chasing our own tails with it. I mean, we should just stop that. As far as the triglycerides, that again can be caused by definitely the things that we eat, but also stress and also sleep. And so you need to optimize those things as well. It also depends on the timing of your test. Like I said earlier, the gentleman who said he had very high triglycerides straight after eating, you always will if you're eating a fatty meal. And so the time that you're fasting before your cholesterol test will change the amount of triglycerides. So if you're fasting 8 hours or you're fasting 12 hours, you'll get a different result. And so, I mean, you could try this yourself. Stop eating at 9 o'clock the night before, check it 9 o'clock in the morning. Then check it 2 hours after that, 2 hours after that, 4 hours after that, and don't eat the whole time, or eat and then test it every 4 hours after you eat. You'll see it dramatically changes your triglycerides and the other lipid markers. So even fasting, well, I fasted 8 hours, or this guy fasted 12 hours, there's going to be a discrepancy there. So you need to do things consistently. And again, a test is only as good as a retest. You want consistent data points. You're saying you tested your cholesterol 3 years ago. We don't really know what happened in the intervening time. So you've been 2 months Lion diet, and it's supposed to go lower triglycerides. Yeah, unless you're stressed, unless you're not sleeping well. What were your triglycerides right before you started the Lion diet? That's the question, because you tested it 3 years ago. But did that stay exactly the same that whole time? Even if you're eating the same way, it doesn't necessarily mean those numbers will stay the same. And so you need to get an accurate marker. So I would use this as a baseline, actually, as long as you were fasting. If this is a fasting panel, then I would do that. If it wasn't a fasting panel, if you didn't have at least 12 hours between meal and blood test, you get first thing in the morning, fasting from 9 p.m. last night, get it between 8 and 9 a.m. in the morning, at least 2 glasses of water, no more than 4 glasses of water, no sex or exercise the morning of or the day before, because that will derange things. That will change your blood panel. So, and your cholesterol panel, certainly, and definitely your hormones. So you need to do these things consistently, and you'll get more consistent, reliable results. So I would check it again. I would get it at least 12 hours postprandial, so after a meal, fasting at least 12 hours, and no exercise or sex, at least, and get enough water, everything like that, and check what it is, and then check it again in a few months and see what it is. I would promise you that that's going to come down as long as you got your stress and your sleep under control, and you're doing everything else from a diet perspective. But again, you don't know what your levels were right before you started, and it's important to know that. And so I would take this as your baseline and then go from here. Sorry, just 1 second. Okay, so LECHF, thank you very much for the super chat. Question, not losing more weight after 6 months. Carnivore, started adding salad, lettuce to lower the calories. Which salad is less harmful? Thanks. Well, the thing is, look, hold on a second. You're adding in something to lower something else. Like if you think you're eating too much, just don't eat so much, right? But your body knows better. And you bring in salad, you're bringing in, random leaves, and they're going to have random chemicals in them that aren't necessarily going to be good for you. Are you saying you want to eat less? Then eat less. Don't eat more to eat less, right? So, you don't have to add in lettuce, if you want to sort of cut back on things. Drink more water. If you really just want to fill up your stomach with mass and matter, you can just do that. So you can just drink a lot more water. A lot of people don't drink enough water. And in fact, they mistake hunger as or thirst as hunger. And so they end up, eating when they actually should be drinking. But the thing is too, is that, you're not losing more weight, but are you losing more fat? And are you eating enough to stimulate fat loss? Because, like I said earlier, your body is very fiscally responsible. If you have less energy coming in, you're going to have less energy going out, pure and simple. And so if you're cutting calories, you're cutting nutrition, your body's going to cut your metabolism. That's just what's going to happen. And so you'll end up losing less weight. We know this from many different sources, biochemistry being one, but human trials in was it the Minnesota starvation studies? Anyway, Ansel Keys, our good friend, the evil, the evil doctor, what are they called? Those evil genius sort of people that like up in a lab making Frankensteins and things like that. Frankenstein's monster, Dr. Frankenstein. But damn it. Anyway, some sort of mad scientist. That's what it is. The mad scientist, Ansel Keys. He took a bunch of people that were didn't want to fight in World War II, and said, okay, well, if you don't want to get drafted and sent over there, you've got to be part of this experiment. So they said yes, and they basically starved these people to see what would happen to the body when you starve them. And they sort of limited food intake, and they found that they lost weight quite precipitously at first, and then it sort of leveled off. And so some of these people, if it's just calories in, calories out, they would have ceased to exist because they ate less calories than they would have needed to maintain any amount of weight. And so if it is just calories in, calories out, and there's a certain amount of calories correspond to a certain amount of weight and fat, they'd be dead. And they weren't dead. They stabilized and were able to last a very long time. They actually didn't lose more weight than that. It was very, very slow loss of weight after that, if anything. And so that's because their metabolism slowed down, because their metabolism is much smarter than the people who think that calories in, calories out is all there is to know about biochemistry. And so that's that's what we see. We see people's metabolism shutting down. And so if you're not eating enough, you're not eating enough fat, you're not stimulating your metabolism, you're not going to lose weight. Your body's going to slow down. It's going to stop losing weight. And in fact, you can actually put on fat. And so the last thing you want to do is start adding in a bunch of salads, because A, why would you? Just drink water if you just want to eat less and you want to fill up your stomach. And B, you're going to slow your metabolism more. And also, what is weight? Is weight only fat? Is the only thing that has weight is fat? And so if you lose weight, you are losing fat, because people can go vegan, they can starve themselves, and they can lose weight. But some of that weight's going to be muscle, and some of it's going to be bone, some of it's going to be fat. You don't want to lose muscle and bone. You only want to lose fat. And so, and maybe not even that, someone has fat to lose. So, when you go on a carnivore diet, you lose weight, but you also put on muscle and you put on bone. And so you don't lose as much weight, but you're losing more fat. And that's the whole point. I experienced the same thing myself. I dropped the salads. I already wasn't eating carbohydrates because they made my back hurt. And I just noticed, I'm like, I don't want to eat that. My back hurts for 3 days after I eat anything with carbs in it. And so I was just eating spinach, kale, and broccoli and just lean meat. And I stopped eating the veggies, the greens, started eating a lot more meat, stimulated my metabolism, and I lost 23 pounds in 10 days, right? And then I lost nothing. I lost nothing after that. So you're losing weight for 6 months. I only lost weight for 10 days. But you know what? I was losing fat, and I was putting on muscle because I was working out. And so I was replacing the fat I was losing with muscle I was gaining. And so I stayed the exact same way, and I didn't care. So I didn't care about my weight. I didn't care what that number said. I cared how I felt. I cared about my athletic performance. I cared about how much energy I had, and I cared about my body composition. I was losing fat visibly. I could see that. My clothes fit differently. I looked different in the mirror. And then I was putting on muscle. Same thing. I was visibly getting more muscular. And so that was great. That's what I wanted. My weight didn't change. So don't worry about your weight. You want to worry about your health first and foremost, how you're feeling, how your energy is, how your athletic performance is if you work out, and then body composition way down at the distant second, and weight never. You should not be worrying about weight on the scale. You should be worrying about health and body composition very secondarily. And that's how you get it. You eat the right things. You don't put things in your body that are harmful. If salad were such a good way of losing weight, we wouldn't have the weight problem we have now. We started suggesting salads and greens and veggies in the 80s to lose fat. And what happened? The obesity rate went up from 8% to 42%. So Salads don't do it. Salads don't do the job. Steak does it. Stimulate your body, stimulate your magnesium or your metabolism, build up your metabolism. So your body says, we don't need to hold on to this. We can lose this. And workout, exercise, anaerobic exercise, that's going to be the best thing to stimulate your body and your health. And then don't worry about the scale. You want to get a DEXA scan, check your body composition, then you check it again in 3 months and see what happens. Then you can make some more more accurate decisions and conclusions based on real evidence as opposed to the weight. Don't waste your time on the scale. It'll lead you wrong. Abel, thank you very much for the super chat. Dr. Chaffee, a bothering question. Do you remove the visible white chunks surrounding the ribeye? Also, no, I don't. I eat all the fat. At first, it's difficult to do that. So you have to sort of cut off small pieces of fat, put it with a lean piece of meat and eat it together. And that tastes good. Now, that took months for me to get used to eating fat. Now I can just eat chunks of fat that taste great. So you can recondition that. We're conditioned to not like the taste of fat. We're conditioned to feel physically sick and ill when we eat fat because we're told that's going to make you sick. That's going to be bad. So your body's, oh God. And you get this psychosomatic response. And so you can undo that. And now I can. At first I couldn't. So I took a small sliver of fat, put it with the lean meat, ate it together, tasted great. Now I can just eat chunks of fat and it tastes great. So goes on. Also, what do you think about kosher meats, like the fat surrounding the loins being a different fat? So kosher meats, from my understanding, is something that was prepared in the kosher, means. Same with halal. So this is something that the animals had to be treated nicely. I'm all for that. If there's any sort of signs of damage or abuse or illness, they won't touch them. At least in halal, I believe in kosher as well. Similar sort of origins, just being thankful and kind to this animal that's giving its life for your life and your family's life. And, saying a prayer to them and thanking them and their spirit for their, dying so that we may live. I don't think it has anything to do with actually how the animal was raised. I think it's more about, treating it well and not harming it and then slaughtering it in a very specific manner. So that's good. Some might think that the kosher way, because I believe they sort of cut their throats and let them bleed out. That's the traditional way. And back in the day, that's probably the quickest way to kill something. There's no nice way to kill something. Now we have pneumatic hammers and we have, like electrocution. So you just go and it's done. It's probably, there really isn't any other way that's quicker than that we have anyway. It's as close to instant as it is possible to get at the moment, and that has ever been able to get. So those are some of the things with kosher and halal. You just treat the animal better and try to give it as clean a death as possible. I don't think it actually changes the quality of the meat apart from, the animal was treated better, or at least didn't have any visible signs of harm or duress at the time of slaughter, I believe. So I don't know if it makes too much of a difference past that, but certainly if that's something you want to do, I mean, there are extra steps and measures being taken, in the, for the benefit of the animal. And that's not a bad thing. So Scott Weldon, thank you for the super chat. There's no question attached, but maybe there's you don't have to do another super chat. You can just sort of put it in and try and star it and bring it up. So if it's down in the chat, we'll try and catch it. Danny Becker, thank you very much for the super chat. My blood show I have hyperthyroidism, Graves' disease. Are you familiar with anyone having success with carnivore without nuking the thyroid? Yes, absolutely yes. I've had a few patients with Graves' disease and that have improved with a carnivore diet. So is that to say that everyone will? Nope. It's very preliminary, and it's anecdotal. But go on to the Facebook groups, the long ones, standing ones like Zero Carb Health and Zeroing In on Health. Those are two fantastic ones. They've been around for decades, at least 20 years, I think. And the people doing them have been doing carnivore for 20 years. And so they used to call it zero carb. Now it's sort of called carnivore, but it used to be called zero carb, which is why zero carb health and zeroing in on health. That's sort of the idea. Go into the search function there and look for Graves' disease. You will see hundreds of people talking about their experience with that, and most of them being positive. From what I know, I have seen people improve on that. And if you want more reassurance, then go on those sorts of things and see what other people's experiences have been. Other things can affect this, but autoimmunity is one of the things that responds dramatically well to a carnivore diet, because you're eliminating out the things your body is reacting to. And so the problem goes away. That it is addressing the underlying mechanism. You eat something, it reacts in your body attacks it. You remove that issue, you remove that substance, your body stops reacting, stops attacking. That is the cause of autoimmunity. If you're removing this and the problem goes away, then you're removing the cause, right? So that is certainly something that people have found. So yes, absolutely, it can absolutely help Graves' disease, and I hope it does for you. I would give it a shot. Lion diet, right? So red meat and water only. Grass-fed and finished is the best, but just Safeway beef, you'll be fine. Almost no one, even with autoimmune issues, has to go to grass-fed and finished, but some do. So just be mindful of that. That's always your baseline. That's the base of your pyramid, is just grass-fed and finished beef and lamb. A little bit sort of on the top of that base is grain-finished beef and lamb, and then everything else on top of that. So I would just do that, and I would bet that you'll improve a lot. So Elena Don Francesco, thank you very much for the super chat. What effect does carnivore diet have on estrogen? Depends on if you're a man or a woman. If you're a guy, it can help normalize your testosterone estrogen balance. And with women, it'll help balance your estrogen and testosterone and progesterones. So it'll balance everything, insofar as it can, insofar as it eliminates out all the endocrine disruptors, hormone disruptors, phytoestrogens that will play merry hell with your hormones. And importantly for women, it will improve estrogen dramatically just by getting rid of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates raise blood sugar. Blood sugar raises insulin. Insulin disrupts basically every other process in your body if it gets too high. And one of those processes is conversion of testosterone into estrogen. So women and men make testosterone first, and then that is then converted into estrogen. And high insulin blocks the conversion of testosterone into estrogen in women. But it also stimulates testosterone in the ovaries for women. It does not stimulate testosterone for men. So you're not going to get higher testosterone from eating a bunch of carbs in men. You actually get lower testosterone. So I have men and kids. I had a boy that looked like he might have primary testicular failures. His testosterone was way below even their boundaries. It was like 130. And just put him on a carnivore diet. He wasn't even all that strict. He was just sort of mostly eating meat. And he over doubled his testosterone and sort of got back up. Now he's in a sort of a more normal range, not necessarily for his age because he's in puberty. So he should have it higher, but doubled it. Right. And so that was only on a few months of not even like just doing carnivore, just eating a lot more meat and eating a lot less carbs and sugar and crap. And that doubled his testosterone. Right. So carbs are not going to boost a man's testosterone. They'll boost a woman's testosterone, though, and they'll depress your estrogen. So you get too much testosterone, and you're not converting that to estrogen, so you get too little estrogen. And this is actually a major cause of PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is the number1 driver of female origin infertility. And it also causes hirsutism, which is hairy hair, growing body hair and facial hair inappropriately, sort of in masculine sort of territories. And and you get weight gain and other sorts of problems. So you get rid of carbs, you get rid of these estrogens and phytohormones and hormone disruptors, and your estrogen will improve, your progesterone will improve, your testosterone will improve in whatever direction. It will fix that problem because it removes a very, very potent cause of hormonal disruption in both men and women. And so that'll get better. So you'll have a more balanced hormonal system. Some women find that they get some disruption of their periods for 4 or 5 months after going to a carnivore diet. That's fine. It's just your hormones rebalancing. As long as you're eating enough, you're getting enough meat, you're getting enough fat, your body will do its thing, and these hormones will sort of get in balance after 4 or 5 months. On the outside, the longest I've ever seen was 4 or 5 months. Tends to be that you get back to a very normal pattern of menstruation. And in fact, a lot of people can have very irregular, erratic patterns to their menstruation. Now they get it very regular after that. And that's just your hormones. That's just your hormones balancing out. So that'll be, so that should improve. Scott Weldon, this is from the previous super chat that didn't attach. So thank you again for that, Scott. Dr. Chaffee, my total cholesterol is 458. HDL was 58. Triglycerides were 87, was 12. That's shockingly low. And LDL 400, fasting insulin was 2.5. Would this concern you? First of all, your fasting insulin is excellent. So that's amazing. So these sort of look like American numbers. So I'm going to assume you're in America. And if your insulin is 2.5, that's fantastic. There's Dr. Casey Means, who I had on my podcast. She has the company Levels. They track glucose, have a CGM, constant glucose monitor, to sort of keep track of these sorts of things, see what how to improve your metabolism and your health through glucose and insulin control. And she was saying that sort of the best range they found was between 2 and 6 for your fasting insulin. So that's excellent. And your total cholesterol is 458. That's certainly above the arbitrary boundaries that have been set for cholesterol. But what does that actually mean? Well, in a study with 44,000 people this year, published out of Sweden, they looked for different biomarkers that could best relate to your relate to odds of living over 100. And they found that the 2 best biomarkers for predicting if you were going to live over 100 was low insulin and high total cholesterol. So you got both. So that's very good. All right. So at least according to that study, you're in a better group for longevity. HDL is 58. So that's fantastic. Above 40 for men and above 50 for women is the target range. And I would actually agree with that target range. Triglycerides 87 from 12. I don't know how they were ever 12, even if after a carnivore diet. I've never seen them that low. And certainly if people are eating carbs and sugar and alcohol and things like that, I don't know. I think that might have been just an error in measurement. But either way, if it's gone from 12 up to 87 or 87 down to 12, either way, you're well below the threshold for any sort of concern for triglycerides. So I wouldn't worry about that. LDL, again, if you just fast, your LDL is going to go up. So eat some cookies, eat some Oreo cookies, and your LDL will come right down if that's what you're worried about. It's not what I'm worried about. And again, it was a surrogate. No, sorry, it was a scapegoat for the sugar companies. They needed something to blame for heart disease, because it was much more likely to be that their product was causing heart disease. They're like, well, we got to shift the blame somewhere else. It's complete bullshit. And so why are we still looking at it? It was a con. It was a con then. It's a con now. So I just don't even look at it. There are no high level studies, none, showing a causative relationship between LDL and atherosclerosis, despite anything that Peter Attia says. There's a recent interview he did with Derek from More Plates, More Dates. And he says, well, everyone knows that this is causative. High LDL causes this. And we know that. Anyone who understands math and statistics knows that. Well, the problem with that is that there are no studies at all that show a causative relationship between LDL cholesterol and atherosclerosis. There's just none. And that's the only thing that you can use to prove causation. In fact, there are randomized controlled trials that can show causation with thousands of people, very high powered, well done and designed studies that actually showed the opposite. They showed a protective relationship, that higher LDL cholesterol actually had lower heart disease and strokes. And that's what the Journal of the American College of Cardiology have said is like there should be no arbitrary upper limit on the amount of saturated fat people eat, because the more saturated fat you eat, the less strokes you get. And there is no relationship between higher saturated fat and higher cardiovascular disease. None. So, I think that, doctors here should relook at that and understand that if you understand statistics and you understand how the nature of these studies, you cannot show causation unless you have from anything but an experimental randomized controlled trial. That's the baseline, and all the ones that have been done have shown the opposite. Okay, so anyone who understands math and science and statistics does understand that, unless they've been completely misled by the propaganda. It's complete crap. It's utter crap. And the only high-level studies show the opposite of what their theory shows. And we know that they were lying in the first place. So that fits pretty well, right? We know they're full of shit, and now we have studies proving it. In fact, we had studies then proving it. They just buried them for decades because they didn't want people to know about it. And so, and I wonder why, because they were trying to hide stuff. They were trying to mislead people. And then so they buried that in order to hide it, in order to mislead people. Do not trust these people. Cholesterol was never the problem. Why are we still looking at this? People do ask me about their cholesterol. Well, what about this? And it's generally very similar bloods here. And of course, they're going to be worried about that because we've just been drilled in our ears all the time. I hope to get to a point where no one asks me about their cholesterol, because it was never a problem in the first place. And it's not a problem now. So if I had those numbers, and I probably have something pretty close to those numbers, except my HDL is a bit higher than that, because I've been doing this longer. My insulin's very similar. I wouldn't worry about it. Not because this is a straw man that they make. It's like, oh well, people say, well, if you're metabolically healthy and your insulin's low, well then this doesn't cause a problem. And that's what Peter Attia said. Oh well, I don't know why they would say it. No. I don't give a shit about your metabolism. I don't give a crap about anything else. LDL is not a goddamn cause of heart disease. Full stop. Okay? Not ever. Not in any condition at all. It does not cause heart disease. That was a scapegoat. Something else causes it. Now, does SD-LDL, the small, dense, damaged lipoproteins, do they play a role? Maybe. But they don't cause themselves. Something caused them to exist, and that process is causing these other things, and maybe that plays a role in that. They are not the underlying cause, because something caused them. We make large buoyant LDL molecules. Those do not cause atherosclerosis. You damage those, you disease those. If those were to have a problem, well, something else caused that. So that's not the beginning. That's not the genesis, right? But then again, they're not the driving factor either, because increased SD-LDL only increases your risk factor for heart disease by 70%, 1.7x. Metabolic syndrome increases by 600%, 6x. Type 2 diabetes increases it by 1,000%, 10x, which is up there with smoking, right? So, the one that has the least, relative risk, that's the one, that's the direct cause that causes everything. That's the underlying, bullshit. That little meme, that kid sitting in his car seat going, bullshit. I wish I had that kid. Like just turn it on every time someone says something asinine like that. Smoking carries something else like 11,500% increased risk of developing lung cancer if you smoke, like per pack year history, right? So it goes up, right? So that's a very, very, very strong link, right? And it goes up, with a dose dependent sort of criteria, right? And that's not what you see. Even with SD-LDL, you don't see a very strong relationship. It's a very bad marker for that. So why the hell are we looking at it? I do not look at cholesterol as a sign of heart disease risk, because it's not. Because cholesterol never had anything to do with it in the first place, and apparently it's protective. So if anything, you want to look at your cholesterol to see if you're protected, and you have higher LDL, which seems to be protective. You have lower triglycerides, you have higher HDL, you have lower insulin. All of these seem to be protective. So good for you. Well done. Clay, thank you very much for the super chat. How do we get vitamin C on carnivore? Meat. Also, can I eat just beef, cheese, eggs, butter, and bacon and be healthy? Any workout advice for big muscles? Well, yeah, I mean, you eat that and be healthy. I mean, I am, and millions of other people are. I would limit the cheese, though. I would just stick mostly to the meat, and beef, is the best, definitely. Pasture-raised eggs, butter is great, grass-fed butter. Bacon, make sure you're not getting sugar in the bacon. Workout advice, anaerobic exercise. So high intensity, short interval bursts. So weight training to exhaustion, to muscle fatigue. Sprinting to exhaustion. Resting, do it again, right? Doing those anaerobic exercises, those are hands down by far the best exercise modalities, certainly for building muscle, but also just for general health. Cardiovascular health, hormonal health, longevity. Those are the best kinds of workouts. How do you get vitamin C? Again, in meat. Meat does have vitamin C. Liver has more vitamin C than apples. I'll tell you that, right? And but you don't need as much. Yeah. Okay. So vitamin C, we worry about getting scurvy. But what is scurvy? Scurvy is a misdevelopment of collagen, right? So you need vitamin C to catalyze a reaction that hydrolyzes proline and lysine. So you need to get hydroproline and hydrolysine. That's what you need to form proper, strong collagen. You eat meat, there's plenty of hydroproline and hydrolysine in there. So you don't actually need vitamin C to not get scurvy because you have enough collagen. It's only when you don't have enough collagen, you're not getting enough protein, that you need vitamin C to then make better collagen. You have to make it yourself instead of getting the resources from your food. So if you're just eating meat, you're eating a lot of meat, you don't need it. And there are other things that vitamin C does in the body. You need a very small amount of it, and you get that from meat. And especially when you're not eating carbohydrates, you get plenty, right? Because carbohydrates block out vitamin C. Vitamin C looks very similar to like a fructose molecule with a little tail on it. So they actually go by the same transport molecule, which is called the GLUT4 receptor. And so that pulls in carbohydrates. That also pulls in vitamin C. Right. And so if you are eating a lot of carbohydrates, then that will block out vitamin C. So you'll need an overabundance of vitamin C just to get in what little you need. And if you're eating a lot of meat and collagen, you need even less of it because you don't need it to make collagen. You just need it for its other properties throughout your body. So you don't need it. Look at the Maasai. When eating a traditional diet, not drinking a bunch of Coca-Cola and crap like that, or even when drinking Coca-Cola, but they're also drinking milk. They have a lot of carbs in it. They're not getting scurvy. They're not getting vitamin C deficiencies, right? Because they're eating a lot of meat and they're eating a lot of animal proteins and collagen and things like that, and hydroproline and hydrolysine. They're just getting inherent part of their diet, right? So even now that they're drinking Coca-Cola, they're not all dying of scurvy, right? And they're just dying slowly of diabetes, unfortunately. Maybe scurvy would have given them a wake-up call, like, oh crap, when we were drinking this stuff and in a couple months people are dying, okay, you need to get rid of this crap. But if it's 20, 30, 40 years down the track that people are getting seriously ill from it, so they don't realize, they don't connect the two, right? You get plenty of vitamin C. You don't need nearly as much of it on a carnivore diet, especially when you're not eating carbs. But even when you're eating carbs, if you're eating enough protein, you don't get scurvy. You don't get other problems either. And the Maasai have been very healthy up until eating more Western foods. And when they were eating carbs with milk, but they were eating a lot of meat, they didn't get any problems to do with vitamin C. Karen Caitlin, thank you very much for the super chat. I'll keep an eye out for the question. There wasn't one attached. Big Boss, thank you very much for the super chat. What do you think of fruits? Are there any major downsides to them, or will I do just fine eating a crispy Granny Smith apple? Well, it's all relative, right? So, having an apple every now and then, it's not going to kill you. It is sugar, and it is fiber. You actually don't really want fiber. I don't want fiber. Fiber can cause its own problems, because cause a slowing or prevents you from absorbing up to 30% of the food that you're eating. So if you're eating a bunch of garbage and a bunch of sugar and a bunch of crap, then yeah, sure. Reducing the amount that you absorb with fiber is great idea. But if you're just eating meat, then no, you don't want to do that, because you want to absorb everything that you're eating. That's actually one of the ways that plants detract from your health, is it stops you from absorbing nutrients that you need. That's why you eat. That's the point of eating. Now we're eating for entertainment, which is a really bad idea. You just want to eat for nutrition. You want to live your life, enjoy your life, be a happy, healthy person. And you want to eat to promote that. That's it. That's the reason you should eat, ever. You should not eat for fun or enjoyment or entertainment. You should just eat because you need it, because you need nutrients. And fruits have other problems as well. Sugar is addictive. It can become more addictive. One apple every now and then can turn into a couple apples and more apples, and then some mango, and then a pear, and then all these other things. And then you start getting worse and worse. And I see a lot of people slip down that carb hole and get addicted again. They start putting on weight again. They start losing their health, and then they start eating other carbs and sugar. And then 6 months later, they're back on the couch, regained all the weight, eating pizza and drinking sodas. I see that a lot. And so I did a video, I don't know if someone can link it in the chat, it's just called Fruit and Honey Are Not Carnivore. And so I just go into a lot of these things. And also, most fruits will still kill you. They do still have defense chemicals. Most of them are toxic and inedible to human beings. The ones we eat, the ones that have sugar in them, have less toxins, but that does not mean they have no toxins. There are 80 different medications or more that interact with the toxin, that you can't eat grapefruit or take grapefruit juice with, because there are these toxins and fructoomerins in grapefruit that your liver has to detoxify because they're toxic, hence the name detoxify. And those enzymes are the same ones that metabolize certain medications. And so you get derangements of those of the actions and build up. You can get too much or too little of these medications in your system if you're taking them with or if you're eating grapefruit with them. So they all have toxins. You're not getting away from it just because it's an apple, and a lot of people eat apples. There are some toxins in there, and less in the sweeter fruits, definitely. Or ones that contain fructose. And it doesn't mean like the more sweet, the less toxic, because sugar itself is toxic. And also we've designed these things to be way more sweet than they were in nature. So I just go by the paradigm. If it wasn't around, if we weren't eating it 50,000 years ago during an ice age, you don't need it, and you probably don't want it. So watch that video, Fruit and Honey Are Not Carnivore, and see what you think and make a decision. If you want to add in fruit, fine. Keep it rare. Keep it more rare than cheese and dairy. Just have it every now and then, have a bit of an apple, and watch yourself. Because if that starts creeping up and creeping up and creeping up, the direction going is sugar is a drug. Drugs are addictive. That's how they work. Hikari Myth, thank you very much for the super chat. Can you drink 2A or A2 cream line milk without any issues? Low heat pasteurization. I drink like 12-ounce glasses only for dinner, and don't eat cheese really. Also, thank you for all you do. Oh, well, you're very welcome. Thank you for watching, and I'm glad that things have helped. I hope they've helped. Milk in general, I tend to avoid just because of the carbohydrates. It has enough lactose, it'll spike your insulin and kick you out of your primary metabolic state. If you're doing that once a day, probably less of an issue, but I still wouldn't do it every day. Certainly, I would do it very rarely. I have seen it in myself and others spike your fasting insulin, and so you can actually have a problem with that, depending on how much you drink. I mean, I went overboard. I drank 3 gallons in 3 days, and that was raw milk. So had enough lactose that it, my insulin started creeping up, right? So that's a problem. I don't think that's a good thing. And so regardless of the, the type of casein, that's what the A2 is. There's A1 and A2. Regardless of that, you're going to have enough lactose that it's going to spike your insulin. And I tend to avoid that. I don't like insulin spikes. And so I don't do them. The A2 is less inflammatory. So A1 milk is pro-inflammatory, and A2 milk is less inflammatory, but it still is inflammatory. It's just much less inflammatory than A1 milk. So it depends. So if that's something that you tolerate and you don't have an autoimmune issue and you're not flaring up, I mean, I don't flare up from that. I do fine with A1 or A2 milk, but the lactose is the problem. And so I would just very rarely have milk. I wouldn't do that every day. I certainly don't do that every day, even though I love milk. It's bloody delicious, but I don't have it. I mean, I may have it like once a year, and maybe every now and then, maybe once or twice a year, something like that. But it becomes addictive. You want it more. Like, ooh, it tastes like ice cream now. I mean, it's just crazy how sensitive your sweet receptors get when you're not just inundating it with just constant overload. I drink a glass of milk. It's like, oh my God, it tastes like I'm drinking ice cream. So of course I got to want more. And you have more, and that can sort of set you down that path as well. You're having one glass at dinner. That's great. I wouldn't have this at any other time. I wouldn't just drink milk on its own, have it with a meal with meat, and maybe that's fine. But I wouldn't do it every day. That's just me personally. I would avoid that. Not because of the casein. If you don't react to that, then that's fine. Because of the lactose. And lactose-free milk doesn't work because that's just putting in an enzyme that's just splitting lactose into glucose and galactose. So it still has a sugar. You want like sugar-free milk. They filter out the milk. There actually are some, it's like High Life milk or something like that in America, and they filter out a lot of the sugar and have more protein in it, and actually tastes better, but it has less carbs. But you don't want the carbs. It has enough carbs, it'll screw with your metabolism. So that's why I avoid it. A number one meat eater kid. Thank you very much for the super chat. Thanks, Dr. Chaffee. 67-year-old man, 18 months carnivore, savage. Awesome. That's great to hear. Traveling 1,000 miles with morbidly obese 50-year-old woman / friend, stubborn and set in her ways. How do I start the convo about our way of life? Very good question. It's difficult. I mean, it is very individual because, like you say, someone who's stubborn and set in their ways, they're gonna push back as soon as you start telling them they're doing something wrong. The best thing you can do is lead by example. Show how good you're doing, how lean you are. There's going to be something that they're not really happy about. If they're not happy about their weight, or they're not happy about their diabetes or something like that, I mean, you can talk to them, and so you might be able to find a way in, but you have to do it in a sort of an unobtrusive way, or else they're going to meet up with resistance. And the last thing you want is a conflicting, uncomfortable 1,000-mile car ride with someone who's pissed at you and you're like, can you just stop? You don't want to do that. You don't want to put them in that position, and you don't want to be in an uncomfortable position either. But it's not fair to them to make them feel uncomfortable when they're trapped. And so you have to be very, very subtle and kind about it. Most of the time, it's best to let them come to you. That you're doing better and you're talking about that or whatever. It might be that they have an issue. They have diabetes that they're struggling with and they're having to inject, or they're doing whatever, or they have an autoimmune issue or something. And maybe you just say, it's like, hey, would you mind? Like, I've been doing this thing. It's really helped me. I've just been sort of changing my diet around and just eating meat, and I actually feel really great. And I've just been sort of listening to podcasts. Would you mind if I listened to one? I wanted to sort of catch this one. If you don't like it, we can turn it off, but would you mind? If you do it in a nice enough way, she might say yes. You never know. Might say no. She could do that too, and then you're sort of stuck. But you can find that, and then maybe she has something on diabetes. Maybe I put on an episode, where I talked about diabetes and how you can clear that up, or with Professor Steve Finney, interviewing him, talking about how you can have done clinical trials reversing type 2 diabetes in adults with ketogenic diets. Or my interview with Ben Bickman, something like that. If you think there's something that might speak to her, or she wants to lose weight, putting on my interview with Shaun White, where he lost 250 pounds in a year. He went from being basically to the extent of being bedridden. He could stand up. He couldn't stand up for more than 30 seconds. His legs would go numb and he'd fall over. And because he was very, very overweight, and he just lived on his couch basically for 3 years. And now he's going to the gym. He's being active. He's going. I mean, it's just great. I mean, he's completely reversed his life. He's back to work. He couldn't work before that. He was too depressed, sick, miserable, and overweight. He couldn't do his job. Now he can. Now he's back to work. He's living his life. He's enjoying his family and his children. He's being there. He's being a present father for his children, which is, the most important thing probably that you can do in your life. And this allowed him to do that. So you maybe putting something like that on there. There's probably going to be something that she just doesn't give a crap. And she's just like, yeah, look, I don't care. This is what I want to do. And this is how I want to live. Fair enough. It's her choice. It is her life. And you may disagree with it. And you may worry about her. But it is her decision at the end of the day. But you can try those little things. And, if there's something, if she's taking injections or whatever, like I just did, actually just had my first call on the airplane. I was flying back to Seattle last night. And it was just like, if you're a doctor or a medical practitioner or an EMT or a nurse or something like that, can you please make yourself known to the flight attendants? And I was just like, well, yeah, sort of wondering that. So I was like, all right, went up, talked to him, went to this guy, and he was hypoglycemic. And his blood sugar, thankfully had a constant glucose monitor and CGM. And he noticed it, dropped down to 60, and he took his normal dose of Lantus, which is a long-acting insulin. But because he hadn't really eaten all that much that day, he hadn't eaten a whole bunch of carbs, the insulin was too high, and he dropped it down. So, he had some, some juice and some, sandwich and things like that, and, started coming back up. So he was fine. But, I just sort of explained to him, it's like, hey, if you're eating a different amount, it's not just this is your dose of insulin. The insulin dose depends on how much carbohydrates you have in your system and how much that needs to lower that down. And so if you're just eating less carbohydrates, you just need less of a dose of insulin. So you just sort of, you meter that. And I sort of said, the extension of that is that if you just stop eating carbohydrates at all, you need far less insulin, and eventually your body can heal, and you don't need to use any insulin as long as you're still producing at least some insulin. And that's been shown in, clinical trials. And he said, whoa, really? No one's ever told me that. No one's ever told me you could reverse diabetes. That would be amazing. Can you tell me more? Can you give me some resource? I was like, look, here's the research. Here's the guys. Here's some interviews with them. Here's some lectures with them. And, this is my podcast. You can take a look, and here's some of the videos to watch. And he's like, yeah, I'll definitely do that. No one has ever told me that you could do this. They just said, this is you for the rest of your life. And he had, kidney issues and all these sorts of problems, likely all derived from his diabetes. No one has ever told him that. And I was just like, well, I mean, that's the thing, our education as doctors come from the drug companies, and they tell us how to use these drugs, and we don't really think much past that. And they say, no, you don't have to limit the amount of carbs. You just take a corresponding amount of insulin. Okay, well, how about you just don't take any carbs, then you don't need insulin, right? And, they don't tell you that part of it, right? They tell you, no, eat more carbs, just use more insulin. That's fine. Oh, it's fine to do that. No, it's not fine. I don't want to do that. I want this to go away, right? Well, it's fine for the drug companies because you use more of their products. Yeah, eat all the carbs you want. Oh, it's fine. You just need more insulin. Well, high insulin causes a problem. It's not just the high glucose. So, and then telling them that and just sort of pointing that out, they were like, wow, I really want to know more. So that's something that caught their attention. So there might be something with your friend that catches her attention and said, hey, by the way, you point that out, that might get them interested. Or you'd sneak in, pop in a podcast that you might think would speak to them as well. One of the problems that they have, and they might go, interesting. And if you're just a parent, you don't have to just keep talking about it. You don't want to be that guy that just keeps talking about it. And no one wants to talk to you because the only thing you talk about is that. You don't want to be the alter ego to the vegans that are just like, oh yeah, I'm vegan and this, that. Just don't do that. But you can just be a healthy example, and everyone knows why, and people will start coming to you, and hopefully she does. So Eric C, thank you very much for the super chat. Hi doc, need advice. Triglycerides 132, cholesterol 324, LDL 261, HDL 38, carnivore for 1 month. Doc wants to start statins. 60-year-old male, heart bypass, aortic valve replacement, cancer history. Any advice? Keep doing what you're doing. That is my advice. It's been 1 month. First of all, what were your bloods the month before you started? What were they the day before you started? Right? You need to look at that. You have no idea what the changes were if you don't track the changes, right? You need before and after. So this is a baseline. Check it again in 3 months, see how it goes. Check it again in 6 months, in a year, see how it goes. You will not develop heart disease and atherosclerosis in a month or 6 months or a year. It takes a lot longer than that. So, whether or not you need statins, you certainly don't need to need them now based on 1 month of just eating differently, regardless of what you're eating. And again, LDL will go up if you just stop eating. So eat Oreo cookies for a week, check your your LDL again, that will be low. Your doctor will be happy and you can tell him that he's fired because that's idiotic, right? Check your blood sugar again, or check your cholesterol again in a few months after doing a high fat red meat and water diet. Your HDL will go up, your triglycerides will keep coming down, your LDL will do whatever the hell it wants to do, because that's a metabolic issue. If you're eating carbs, LDL will be low. You stop eating carbs, LDL will go up, or you just stop eating totally, it'll go up as well. So that's a metabolic thing. That's not a you're going to die. Dietary cholesterol doesn't really affect our serum cholesterol anyway. We make the majority of cholesterol. It's only when your body is impaired and stopped from making enough cholesterol is when you start absorbing more cholesterol from your diet. And so your body's perfectly regulating this. Like why are we screwing around with the biomechanics of our body? We think we have to micromanage, all these different things in our body. That's stupid. Like what animal does that in nature? They're all just dropping dead and dying. There's just all these diseases because they just didn't, micromanage their blood markers properly. Those species wouldn't exist. They would go extinct because they suck. Our species is not extinct, so we don't suck. And so these things, you don't have to micromanage them. So I would love to get to the day that no one ever asked me about their cholesterol again, but I do understand why they do. Starting something, oh my God, your LDL came on. Dude, who cares? Stop eating for 5 days. Your LDL is going to go up. Tell your doctor to fast for 3 days. See what his LDL cholesterol does. Is fasting bad for you now? Is that bad for your heart? Eating Oreo cookies, that's going to lower your LDL. Is that good for your heart? Well, LDL, if it goes up, that's a problem. Bullshit. That is not true. There's a direct relationship between high LDL and their development of atherosclerosis. Bullshit. There's zero high-level studies showing that. None. It's correlation only. And there are a lot of correlative studies with hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people showing that higher LDL cholesterol is actually inversely related to heart disease and all-cause mortality. So the higher your cholesterol, the higher your LDL cholesterol, the longer people are living in multi-million person studies, right? The Framingham study itself, which is like probably the only study that your doctor was taught in medical school, certainly the only one I was taught in medical school about cholesterol and heart disease. That was a correlative study. And it said, we were taught that higher cholesterol corresponded with higher rates of heart disease. In fact, it was the opposite. The Framingham study showed the opposite of that, and it was misrepresented by the American Heart Association, which were in the pocket of the sugar companies. This is a fraud. This is a con. I don't pay attention to that. It's not a good marker for heart disease. It was never the cause. LDL is not the cause of heart disease, and so I don't look at it as that cause. I look at other sorts of things as a marker for that, and that is not it. That is not the one I look at. So I look at fasting insulin. I look at blood sugar control, HbA1c, those sorts of things. Those are much stronger indicators. Much stronger. Smoking, drinking, much stronger indicators. Okay, Chris Berry, thank you very much for the super chat. I was feeling bad on carnivore 20 days in. I added 2 electrolyte packs a day and I'm feeling much better. Will I have to do this forever? No, I don't think so. Most people don't need to. I'm glad that you found that and that helped you. Definitely get the ones without sweeteners, without artificial flavorings, no stevia, no monk fruit sugar, nothing like, well, monk fruit, it's a new sweetener. it's a sweetener. It's a random chemical that you're putting in your body. And the newer does not mean the better. It means the less long-term evidence we have for it. Right. And so like that's exactly what you don't want. You want things that have 50,000 years plus of history to it. You want things that have 2 million years of history to it. Meat, right? We've been eating meat for millions and millions and millions of years. That's what you want to eat. So if it didn't exist, if we weren't eating it, during the last ice age, and it didn't even exist during the last ice age, you should definitely not be putting it in your body. It may be neutral, but the likelihood of that of it being beneficial or neutral is much less than it being harmful. So that's great. So no, generally people don't need electrolytes long term. Just give your body a chance to sort of normalize its electrolyte dumping, and it will. And I don't take any electrolytes. I don't even salt anymore. So and I'm doing fine. That was just a natural slow progression. My body just salted to taste, and when you do that, you just get what your body needs. And after about 5.5 years or so, 5.5 years, my body just said, yeah, actually it tastes good without salt. So it actually tastes salted without salt. It doesn't taste bland. So yeah, no, you don't need to do it forever. Just just do it while you can, and then you can sort of go to 1 packet a day, see how you feel after a few weeks, few months, and then down to half a pack a day or something like that, and then try coming off it, see how you go. But yeah, I wouldn't expect you to need this forever, because you're eventually, your body's going to sort of get back to working how it's designed to work, and we're designed to eat meat, so your body's going to work the way it's designed to work when you're just eating what you're designed to eat. And we did not evolve with electrolyte packets, so you would have gotten that from your food. So no worries there. Jerry Graham, so the question is, 55-year-old female. I have SCS for chronic pain, post BC chemotherapy and radiation. Thoughts on them as a neurosurgeon, please. Trying to eat carnivore and heal. Well, as far as pain is concerned, your expression of pain can reduce significantly, right? So that's going to be improved dramatically, right? So you reduce the amount of inflammation you're bringing in your food. You're increasing your ketones, which are going to suppress inflammation as well, and that can significantly reduce the amount of inflammation and pain expressed up your nerves due to that inflammation. So that can help a lot for chronic pain. I did do a video on chronic pain and fibromyalgia, and we did talk about nerve-related pain, radiculopathy. So so even the thing is, with spinal cord stimulators, they're not great for pain. I mean, I have yet to see someone who really had like, oh my God, this just changed my life. It's always just like, we did it, but like, I'm still in a lot of pain. Like maybe it did something, maybe it's better than not. But I mean, I don't do those. It's generally like pain specialists that sort of, do those. We often don't. I don't anyway. But quite often we see those, and they're just like, they're not all that helpful. But changing your diet can be very helpful and reduce inflammation and reduce pain. And if you go to that video of the one I did on chronic pain and fibromyalgia, I think you can watch the video and sort of tell you similar to what I'm telling you now. But what is really telling are the comments. You go into the comment section and you will see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that have dramatically improved their pain and chronic pain situation. It's absolutely amazing. It's so wonderful to see. So you can see that and be like, okay, wow, that has worked for other people in my situation. That can work for me. Is it going to completely reverse all of your issues? It's very hard to say, but it will definitely reduce inflammation. And that can reduce the amount of pain that is expressed. It's not necessarily going to remove the underlying cause of damage and harm to your body, but it will reduce the inflammation, which can absolutely reduce the pain experience. And I hope it does. So I would just go clean, high fat, red meat and water. You want more fat, more ketones, less inflammation. Red meat, because you want absolutely nothing else in your system that your body can trigger an inflammatory response to. And that should put you in the best situation that can reduce the inflammation and reduce pain, and hopefully it does. Okay, I think we've gone for about 2 hours now, and we've got a lot of super chats to get through. So why don't we cut it there? I'll try to get through the rest of the super chats, but I do need to go because I'm just home for Christmas, and I haven't really seen my family yet because I only just got in very late, sort of early morning sort of thing. And so finish up the super chats, and then we'll go from there. And let's see. Okay. All right. So Mark Sanchez, thank you very much for the super chat. Almost at 20 years with athlete's foot. I believe it may be a candida related, and I'm interested in carnivore. Would diet alone possibly help, or would you recommend probiotics and other supplements? No, you don't need probiotics or any other supplement. You'll get, meat is a probiotic. Certainly fermented sort of foods and dairy, like yogurt, is a probiotic. But meat is, I should say, a prebiotic, which is that it feeds the correct bugs in your gut. And just changing what you're eating in a day, that's going to you change your microbiome in a day. It's very responsive because the cell turnover rate, the mitosis rate, they divide every sort of 20 minutes or so, depending on the species, but roughly every 20 minutes for many bacteria. And so, you're stimulating different bacteria that, better, and they're gonna compete faster and respond and replicate faster and quicker and crowd out the other ones that, you don't really want there necessarily. And so, you don't need to take any sort of products or supplements or anything like that. Just eat high fat meat and drink water, and that's it. But that's the trick, is that is it. You don't do anything else. And that can help. And it can certainly help with candida. It can help with fungal infections. Even on the feet, a lot of people find that their toenail fungus and athlete foots clear up. Other people find that it can help their toenail fungus, but it doesn't get completely rid of it. So, it depends. Keep using whatever antifungal powders or whatever you've been using, or if you haven't been using them, start using them. Obviously, see your doctor and see if they have anything for you. But yeah, it can definitely help. And no, you don't need any other sorts of probiotics or supplements. On top of that, it's just the meat. And really the trick is getting rid of all the other things and letting your body just work the way it's supposed to work. Nicole H., thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, Dr. Chaffee. I'm 44 and have Cushing syndrome symptoms, which started in my late teens. Can carnivore alone reverse Cushing's? Well, so there's Cushing's, there's Cushingoid, there's different sorts of causes of very high cortisol. So Cushing's, traditional Cushing's is a pituitary issue. So you have you have like a pituitary microadenoma or something like that. That is metabolically active. It's kicking off a lot of hormones that stimulate cortisol, and this is a sort of a central cause of high cortisol. And there's other causes. You get like a tumor that just pumps out cortisol, and you have other sorts of Cushingoid syndromes that at the end of the day just means you have a lot more cortisol than you need. So there are there is in the literature evidence that being on a ketogenic diet, which a carnivore diet is, but specifically be in a state of ketosis, that ameliorates the effects of hypercortisolism, which is what Cushing's gives. And so that can ameliorate that. And so, meaning they sort of mitigate the problems that you get from high cortisol. And, so that in and of itself helps. So there are groups that will put people on a ketogenic diet, as soon as they discover that they have mega high cortisol or Cushing's or something like that. And then they'll put them on that and often keep them on that after the actual treatment for that, like surgery, taking out a microadenoma or macroadenoma from the pituitary, or a different tumor that's secreting cortisol, different things like that, depending on what the underlying cause is, or some medical cause, treating with other sorts of medications. And But a ketogenic diet has been used as an adjunct to that. So you put people on a ketogenic diet, like a carnivore diet, and that can actually help with the symptoms of high cortisol. And then you get the treatment for that, and then you hopefully sort of address the underlying cause, and you can continue on with the keto. So yes, it can absolutely help. It can help ameliorate the effects and symptoms of Cushing's. And then, I mean, if you were diagnosed in your teens and you're 44, then presumably they've done what they could to address the underlying cause, and presumably maybe they can't. So maybe you've just been on medications, and I don't know what treatment they have you on. I don't treat these sorts of things outside of the surgery side of things. The rest of it's done by the endocrinologist. But if you've been sort of being treated for 30 years and you haven't had, I don't know if you've had surgery, I don't know what else you've done, or maybe you don't want surgery. But at the end of the day, being on a ketogenic diet, like a carnivore diet, and preferably a carnivore diet, I think it's much better for many reasons. It can help that. And but hopefully there's some sort of way to address the underlying cause of that as well. Baby Jesse James, thank you very much for the super chat. I'm on Ketovore with OMAD, and I'm trying to work my way to carnivore. Once I reach my goal, how do I stop losing weight if I'm not consuming any carbs? Would I need to increase my fat intake? You just need to eat enough. So you just eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. Your body will do the rest. If you're working out, if you're exercising, you'll stimulate muscle growth and bone growth. And so that's what you need to do. So you need to give yourself proper stimuli, and that will grow your body. And then you need to give the proper nutrients so that it can do that. If you just want to stay exactly where you are, then just, do what you're doing. But you need to eat enough. You need to eat enough meat. You need to eat enough fat. And you don't need to eat more than your body wants. Your body will tell you. Your body will tell you how much to eat. So you just keep eating fatty meat until it stops tasting good. You get down to a stable body weight and body fat percentage, and you're eating until it stops tasting good. Then you won't lose weight. You'll be very stable. If you keep losing weight, you're not eating enough. Or it's unhealthy weight. Your body's trying to get rid of inflammation, fat, water weight, things like that. But if you're losing weight past that, you're not eating enough. If you want to put on weight, if you want to put on lean, healthy weight, you need to exercise. You need to do anaerobic exercising, weightlifting, sprinting, and then again, eat enough. Eat until it stops tasting good, and your body will know. Your body knows how much it needs. You should be able to eat intuitively if this is what we're naturally designed to eat. And that's what people are able to do. So just do it. Okay, I think it's Stephen James. Thank you for the super chat. Looks like you did another super chat. It still didn't connect, but it looks like there's another one here. So Stephen James, thank you very much for both super chats and your question. What vitamins are there in beef and bacon? All the vitamins and minerals that you need for maintaining optimal health. So all of them, So, the thing is that you need a different constellation of nutrients based on what you're eating. And you have different anti-nutrients in plants, just like carbohydrates, it blocks out vitamin C. And you don't need as much vitamin C if you're only eating meat because you're getting enough protein and collagen, right? So you need a very different constellation of nutrients depending on what you're eating. So, by the time we looked at our RDAs, and again, this is Ansel Keys, and I just hate this guy. I don't trust this damn thing this guy did. Now, presumably, something he's done was worthwhile, or else he would never have been in the position to sell his soul. If he didn't have any power and influence, he wouldn't have any power or influence to sell. So, presumably would have done something right, but who knows when that started? I don't, and I don't care. The guy's a crook. And also, he looked at the recommended daily allowances, at a time then when everyone was eating carbs and plants and a mixed diet, so you don't know. We certainly know that you don't need as much vitamin C as he thought we did, right? And that's still just a holdover from World War II. So, it's very different. And so, the simple fact that you can just eat meat and live your entire life without eating anything else tells you that you get absolutely everything you need in the proportion that you need it, right? And so that's where the Inuit and the Maasai and the Nanette and all of our ancestors going back throughout all of the ice ages who were only eating meat, or very nearly only eating meat. And certainly during the ice ages and the ice flows, not much else to eat besides meat. And they were all doing great. So everything you need in the proportion that you need it is found there. And people say, whoa, what about these phytonutrients? You need these things in plants. There's a recent article came out showing that there are more phytonutrients in grass-fed beef than in the plants themselves, because they concentrate it. They filter out the bad stuff. They concentrate all the good stuff, and that's what you get. So you get everything you need. There was one. Oh gosh, where was that from? Anyway, it was a paper that came out, and they were just basically saying that there's likely about 50,000 different micronutrients in beef that are essential, that you need, that we don't even have names for. So it's like, so there's a lot in there anyway, but the short answer is everything. It's got everything. Copper's Kitchen Carnivore, my friend Melissa. Okay. Sorry, I may have not seen your private chat. Well, thank you for the super chat. You definitely didn't need to do that. But Melissa says, in several groups recently, people are asking about getting more collagen, and the answer they are hearing is get commercial collagen products now. I think you can get all you need from animal products. Thoughts? Thanks. Yes, absolutely. You can get absolutely everything that you need. You don't need to get from commercial collagen. You don't need anything from a commercial source. You just don't. That's the whole point of this, is that you get everything you need, when you're eating properly. You shouldn't need to supplement. Now, maybe there's some specific conditions, that people may need, more. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but maybe they exist. But certainly for the vast majority of people, you don't need that. You don't need commercial collagen products. You just need to eat meat. And, if you really wanted more collagen, make bone broth. There's tons of collagen in there. And so you certainly don't need a commercial product. And people, but do you need more collagen? Do you need more collagen than you're getting in meat? Probably not. There are people that live their entire lives just eating meat and not even making bone broth, and perfectly fine, have all the collagen that they need. So why do you need different amounts? You'll get everything you need from meat. If you're really worried about collagen and something that you're trying to catch up on or something like that, make some bone broth. Tons of collagen in there. Yeah, so I agree. I don't think you need to buy anything other than just meat. Curtis Barron, looks like I'll catch your one down here. Great. Curtis, thank you so much for the super chat. I'm completely off insulin, and my diverticulitis is unbelievable. 1 year carnivore. Well, that's amazing. Thank you very much for sharing that. That's absolutely fantastic. And that's something that people say you can't be done. You cannot get off your insulin. You cannot get away from diabetes. And look at that. People are doing it. Millions of people are doing it around the world. So that's amazing, Curtis. Thank you very much for sharing that. Hopefully that helps other people feel a bit more confident about trying it for themselves. Moby Connected, thank you very much for the super chat. Is there any issue eating more burger 70-30 versus steak? Also, best to keep fat 2 times the protein. Excuse me. No, there's no issues with that. It's meat, right? And so it's the same cow. You've just ground it up, right? And so because you've taken these parts that are a bit less tender and you sort of ground them, and now they're able to be chewed. So no, that's totally fine. It's very, very healthy. 70-30 is a good fat content. 65-35 is about 2 to 1 grams of fat to protein. It depends on what you're going for. Look, your body has limited capacity to absorb fat, and so that's based on your bile. You can't really absorb fat without bile, a little bit, but really small amount, like 10% or so. And so, if you're eating fat to a point that you've satisfied and saturated your body's ability to absorb that fat, well, that's all you want. You aim for about 1 to 2 grams of fat to 1 gram of protein, then you just adjust for your body. And if you're able to get 65-35 or so meat and fatty meat, and you're absorbing that all fine, and you're not getting diarrhea, you're just getting sort of soft stools, it means you're not eating way more than fat than your body can absorb. that's great. Just do that. So listen to your body, listen to your stools, make sure that they're soft and a normal texture. If they're getting more loose and liquid, then that could be that you're eating a lot more fat than your body can absorb, and so you're just not absorbing it, so you don't necessarily need to eat it. However, coffee, tea, any artificial sweetener, any like stevia, monk fruit sugar, sorbitol, xylitol, all those things will cause diarrhea. They can all be laxatives, but also magnesium supplements, metformin, which a lot of diabetics are on. Those can all cause diarrhea as well, especially when you get rid of fiber out of your diet. It's much more likely to cause diarrhea then too. So that could cover that up too. So just be mindful of that. But just aim for about 1 to 2 grams of fat to protein, and adjust according to your body's ability to absorb it. It's going to absorb what it wants to absorb. I don't think for a second that you can absorb more than your body wants you to absorb unless you force it to with something like ox bile. I don't think your body's making a random amount of bile to absorb a random amount of fat. Your body just doesn't work like that in any other way. So I don't believe that. So yeah. So Abel, thank you very much for the super chat. Dr. Chaffee, coming from Gym Bro Science, everyone says I need 3.5 kilocal of a balanced diet. I did it for 1 year, no gains, but skinny fat. Do I need the same 3.5 K of fat or much less? TDEE, I don't know exactly what that means. Too mad, that's twice 2 meals a day. Thanks. Yeah, well, look, I mean, this is the whole thing. Your biochemistry is so much more complicated than any little equation. There is no equation complex enough to explain the absolute workings of our biochemistry. So, anyone who says this crap has just never taken biochemistry, or if they did, then they should have failed it, because this is stupid. That's a stupid thing to say. And so, Ben, what the hell is a balanced diet? Balanced with what? What a balanced diet really means is you need a balance of all the essential nutrients in a balance, in the right proportion, right? So if you get a whole bunch of proteins from plants, but they're out of proportion, that's not a balance. You're not getting enough of certain amino acids. Maybe you can get all the amino acids, but you're not getting a balance. They're not balanced in a way that you get the effects that you need, and so that's a problem. And then just all the nutrients, B12. You just need these specific nutrients, 50,000 or more nutrients, essential nutrients in meat, and you need those things. So that's what a balanced diet is that you get a balance of all the nutrients that you need, and so that's what a steak is, right? So you're already doing a balanced diet. You're getting a balance of all the macro and micronutrients that you need in a fatty state. So that's a balanced diet. Or do you want, when people say, you have to have a balanced diet, and they think you have to eat all these different food groups. First of all, there's one food group. It's called food. Food is species specific. So it's just not, you can eat anything. That doesn't make it food. And so that's not a food group, is it? Meat is food. That's it. So that is a balance of all the food groups, because that's the only thing that's food for humans. Right. And so, yeah, you want to eat vegetables, you want to eat this, if you're saying you have to eat something that contains carbs, that has leafy greens, that has all these different colors. I mean, what nutrient is red? Exactly. There are multiple things that make the red color. So that's very foolish anyway. And then, meat, right? So you want a balance of all those things. When people go vegetarian or vegan, that's not a balance. No one ever says they have to get a balanced diet. Oh, that's really good for you. No, this is silly. This is just one of the many fooleries that people throw out there to try to mislead people. So you want a balance of all these sorts of things. Why? Do they have all the different nutrients? I mean, that's the thing. It's just like, if you're saying you need a balance of all these different sorts of things, it means that you have no idea what you actually need. You have no idea what nutrients you need and what is actually right for humans. You have no idea what our evolved diet is. You have no idea what our biological, what is important for us biologically, and you just need to cover your bases. You need to hopefully try to eat all these random things, so you hopefully get all the nutrients that you need to get a balance of the nutrients, right? And you just have no idea how to do that. Well, if you just eat a steak, you do that, right? And but also you get the bad with the good, right? Because those things don't just come with nutrients. They come with anti-nutrients. They come with toxins. And so is that what you want? You want a balance of nutrition and poison? I don't need that balance, right? So a balance of what? Exactly. You just need nutrients, and just eat steak. That's what you need. That's a balanced diet. 3,500 kilocalories. What? I mean, a calorie is not a calorie is not a calorie. And you can address that by many different ways of looking at it. And I'm not the first one to say that. I mean, Dr. Robert Lustig has an entire lecture series called "A Calorie is Not a Calorie," and just goes into that. And so, and it's very, but it's wrong. Eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. If you're working out a lot, try to eat twice a day to make sure that you're getting enough to put on adequate muscle. And that's it. You don't need to count calories. You don't need to count macros. I've never seen a koala pull out a calculator to figure out its macros, and you don't need to either. If you need a calculator to figure out what to eat, you're eating the wrong thing. So if you're eating the right thing, you should be able to eat intuitively, just like every other animal on earth. And so do that. Eat steak, eat meat, eat fatty meat, keep eating until it stops tasting good. No animal on earth, when they have access to food, does not eat that food, right? And so why would we? If our body is getting less than it's asking for, it assumes that it's because you don't have access to it, right? It's not assuming anything. There's no intelligence there. It's just a reaction. It's a response, right? And so if you're not getting it enough, your body's going to, okay, shut it down, slow it down, because if you had food, why the hell wouldn't you eat it? Everything else does, right? So that's what that is. So just eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. Try eating twice a day just to make sure that you're getting enough, and listen to your body and relearn your hunger signals, because that will tell you everything you need. And there's a post from my sister, Rosalind. Very nice to see you, Rosalind. And Thea is my niece. And Thea wants to say, hi, Anthony. Well, hi, Thea. Very nice to see you. It's been nice. Thea, my sister, Rosalind, picked me up from the airport last night. I was very, very kind of them, especially because it was actually ended up being late because my plane got delayed. And I ended up giving her like piggyback rides and airplaning her around the baggage claim area, and getting a lot of people. It was very crowded, and I had this little 7-year-old on my shoulder, and it was just all right. I mean, not bad, but it was funny. She was like airplaned out, like stiff as a board, like on my shoulders, just sort of holding her there, and she was just flying through. So that was kind of funny. So hello, Thea. Very nice to see you. Tim Marr, thank you very much for the super chat. I've noticed on Carnivore, I no longer get mosquito bites. That I used to get killed by mosquitoes. Anytime we go out, I get much less now. I wonder if it has something to do with blood sugar. I wonder if it has to do with, going after, sweeter blood, and going after, more blood sugar. I don't know if it was Dr. Borosh or Dr. Somlai, but they're both deuterium experts. I can't remember. I think one of them mentioned that they thought it was because of the deuterium, and there's going to be more deuterium in a carb and sugar, high blood sugar individual, and that because they're trying to get blood to go and multiply their eggs and things like that, you need more deuterium for multiplication and all that sort of stuff. So when you're growing, and so they think that they're going for higher deuterium content. But whatever it is, it seems to be that we get less mosquito bites now, which I am not complaining about. That I still get them, but much less. I used to get eaten alive by those little bastards. So yeah, I'm very, very happy about that. I don't know. Maybe other people. I don't know what other people's experience has been in with mosquitoes as well. But maybe leave that in the comments. Let people know. So Melody, thank you for the super chat. I think there's continues down here. So there we go. So Melody asks, what causes the diastolic blood pressure to be high? I heard sugar. I got rid of sugar and seed oil. There are a lot of causes of high blood pressure, and a lot of it can be due to high insulin, and then your arteries stop being compliant, and they stop growing and shrinking, and in response to insulin, because they just get tired of it. It's like, yeah, boy, we cried wolf. We've been hearing this for a while. We're not listening to you anymore. And then so it just sort of stays in that so size. You're gonna have the same volume, gonna have higher pressure. And then when you get rid of carbs, get rid of sugar, get rid of seed oils, get rid of alcohol, then it starts being compliant again, now that you have more normal low insulin levels. And that seems to be a major driver for high blood pressure. And improving high blood pressure, that's a major way to improve high blood pressure. And there are other causes, though. So if a lot of people will improve their blood pressure by getting rid of all carbs, sugars, and seed oils, alcohol, going on a carnivore diet, ketogenic diet, but people who don't, there are other causes of high blood pressure that should be investigated. Things like pheochromocytomas, they're very rare, but about 5% of people that have sort of unresponsive high blood sugar, sort of poorly controlled blood sugar or uncontrollable blood sugar, have a pheochromocytoma. So, worth looking into, but, going on a carnivore diet improves a lot of people's blood pressure. So you need to be careful, because if you're on blood pressure medication, that can go too low and you can get dizzy, you can fall. So you need to be mindful of that and get on a weaning plan with your doctor. If you start getting that, if you get up, you start getting lightheaded and dizzy a lot, you probably need to be on a lower dose of medication. So you need to talk to your doctor. And and that's it. And if you're getting a response and you're able to come off your medications, great. If not, then you should investigate some of those different kinds of high blood pressure with your doctor. Lolita Sila, thank you for the super chat. Dr. Chaffee, will carnivore reverse male pattern hair loss? It can for some. Dr. Berry has a episode on this that he said that if you sort of start seeing hair loss in your 30s and 40s, that's likely due to insulin resistance. It's likely due to high blood sugar and high insulin, and that's actually the cause of it. And actually, going on a ketogenic diet, carnivore diet can actually help that and reverse that. So yeah, it depends. I mean, there are a lot of people who improve their hair. It's interesting. Jordan Peterson, who's has done carnivore for health reasons, sort of just came to it randomly. He and his daughter. I saw a TED talk of his. When he came to prominence after the Bill C-16, I followed him since the very beginning. Before he had his books out and he was doing his tours, I came across him just on the internet, people trying to blast him. And he knew what to say, and he was just like, "Look, no, that's not what's going on here." And I was like, "Wow, that guy's really bang on a lot of these things," and he's defending himself very well, even though he came under a huge amount of fire. And I was like, "Wow, that's really good." So I started sort of listening to more and more of him, and it was very interesting. But at that point, I think he'd already been keto and then recently carnivore, or maybe soon after, but. He improved his health in many ways. And I actually saw a TED talk that he gave before he was Jordan Peterson, back when he was just a, Harvard professor, and an academic. He did a TED talk, and he was talking, he was much more lethargic. He was much more, slow in his speech, and he was much more portly. And had much thinner hair. And I was actually pretty surprised. He looked 20 years older than he does now and far less healthy. And that's, so at least for him, it looked for him like, maybe you guys can find that TED talk. I mean, he had noticeably thinning hair. Now it's much thicker. So a lot of people find that they have much thicker hair. So it can help in that regard. And it seems to be due to high blood sugar and insulin. So it's worth a shot anyway, but whether or not, and the thing is too, is that if you've already started losing your hair, and if the follicles are damaged but not destroyed, they may not be healthy enough to grow a hair and produce a hair, but they're still alive. And so if they're still alive, then you can still bring them back to life. You're not going to raise the dead. So if that hair follicle is dead now, then it's not going to come back. And so it just depends. So if someone has had a certain amount of, it has just started the balding pattern, then some of those hair follicles are still going to be alive, and they can potentially come back. And so hopefully that's the case. But if they're dead, then unfortunately they won't come back. And yeah, so it's definitely worth a try anyway. Give it a shot and see how you go, or see how your friend goes if you're asking for someone else, asking for a friend. And Sheila Sabalboro, thank you for the super chat. I'm not seeing anything attached. I don't see anything down in the chat, but maybe there's further down. I'll keep an eye out for it. Heather Mayfield, thank you very much for the super chat. What can I say or show someone who says red meat leads to increased prostate cancer in African American men? You don't have to show anything. They have to show that to you. Okay. Say like, okay, what are you basing that on? Well, everyone knows it. No, please show me. So you don't need, so that's the thing. They're assuming a fact that's not in evidence. They have to supply evidence first before they make that accusation and that assertion. So they're saying, well, hey, this increased prostate cancer in African American men. Okay, it says who? What's the evidence? So they need to provide that evidence first, and then you can provide counter evidence. Why do you need to provide counter evidence for evidence that was never provided? There is no evidence. They did not provide. They just made an accusation. Okay, well, they need to back that up. And so if they show you a randomized controlled trial showing that red meat increases prostate cancer in African American men, then you go, okay, well, then we should look into this and we should look at the data more. They're just making an accusation. You absolutely don't need to to jump through hoops to prove a negative. I mean, you don't. There's nothing to prove there. They haven't supplied any evidence. So if they haven't supplied any evidence, they need to do that. So, okay, well, what are you basing that on? What papers, what studies, what this, what the other? And that'll make them go, oh, okay, well, this is just something I heard sometime. And they go look into it and they're like, shit, well, there's just a blog post or just some article or something like that. Well, if there aren't any actual studies, then there's no evidence, is there? And it doesn't. African-American men in particular, African-American women as well, or just, people of sub-Saharan African descent around the world, whether they're American or not, I think it's even more important for them to go on a carnivore diet, a meat-only diet, because it's much more recent that they've been introduced to agriculture through Western influence. And same with the Native Americans and the Native Australians. There's much more recently that they started getting exposed to agriculture. And I think that that's a major driver for health disparities. There's going to be multifactorial. That's one of them. And so certainly in the Native American population, the Native Australian population, they've only been really eating agricultural crops for 100 years as a people. Think of the Plains Indians. They were eating bison up until the day the bison population were wiped out, and that was in the late 1800s, with Buffalo Bill. And so that's very recent. People from Europe or the Mediterranean or Persia and parts of Asia, they've had agriculture for 7,000-8,000 years. They've at least had some time to adapt. But then other populations like sub-Saharan Africans, like Native Australians, like Native Americans, North and South, it's a much more recent introduction to these agrarian foodstuffs. And you're going to get more harm from that because they haven't picked up as much defenses. You go back to Herodotus, ancient Greek historian. They chronicled an encounter between Persian Empire and the Ethiopians. And so the king of Ethiopia was talking to the diplomat from Persia and said, "Hey, what does your emperor eat? How long do your people normally live?" And they explained, growing wheat and making bread. And they said that our people would normally live around 70 years, pretty similar to now, right? And no modern medicine, anything like that. And that's how long they live, not just average life expectancy from birth, which is a con. This is a manipulation of statistics. There are three kinds of lies, right? Lies, damn lies, and statistics. And that's one of them, is just saying, oh, average life expectancy for people are only living to be 30. No, that's not what that means. That's average life expectancy from birth. And if 3 out of 5 people are dying in infancy, that brings that number way down as an average. That doesn't mean that's how long people lived when they died of old age. Just when they were killed by something brings down the group average. That's not what we're talking about. No one cares about that number. Realistically, you're not looking at that number as, oh, this is how long I'm likely to live. No, that's meaningless for that. And so back then they were saying we live about 70 years when people die of old age, right? Because they didn't use statistics like lunatics back then, or maybe they did, but not in that case. And the king of Ethiopia sort of laughed at him and said, well, no wonder you live such short lives if all you eat is dirt, because we only eat boiled meat and we only drink the milk of our cattle, if besides water, and we would live 120 years, sometimes much longer. And people say, well, they're just lying. They're just making that up. No one lives that long. Well, we know as geneticists now that we're genetically designed to live 120 years on average. So it's exactly that. He hit the nail right on the head. And, and they were just eating meat. And so that's that sub-Saharan African population that, at least 2,500 years ago, when Herodotus was writing that, they were still eating just meat. And, up until very recently, most of the rest of the continent were just hunting and eating meat. So I would think it would be even more beneficial. It's gonna be beneficial to everybody. We're all humans, so we're all gonna have an optimal diet. It's just some people have more of a defense against suboptimal agrarian food. But that's going to be people that have had agriculture for 10,000 years or so, not a few hundred. So it's going to be even more beneficial to your friend, hopefully. T. Alexander RJ, thank you very much for the super chat. Greetings, Anthony. You think 200 grams of bacon in a day is too much? No, it's not. As long as it doesn't have a whole bunch of sugar and additives and things like that. I mean, I think pork belly obviously is a bit more safe. You're not going to have a whole bunch of nonsense in it. But if you can get, sugar-free cure and no artificial sweeteners, dear God, just as natural cure with no sugar. I think Pedersen's Farms does it. I think Hempler's does it. Depends on where you are in the world, but if it's as very few amounts of additives and sugar, it's perfectly fine. Factory farmed pig are going to be fed a bunch of corn and soy, less good, but as long as you're not reacting poorly to it and you're doing well with it, go for it. Joshua Bester, thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, Doc. My sister is vegetarian. She developed a lot of problems due to iron deficiency. Why aren't people more aware of iron deficiency in vegetarian, vegan diets? Thanks. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And well, yeah, it's because there's a lot of propaganda. There's a lot of inundation. They say, wow, look at spinach, has all this iron in it. And they know, but they don't tell you that it's not bioavailable and you can't absorb it. And you certainly can't absorb it or absorb much of it. And so we've just been lied to, and we continue to get lied to that you can eat just plants and be perfectly healthy. And so why would you eat an animal? Because you damn well have to. That's why. And if you want to be healthy and you want your children to be healthy and you want your parents to be healthy, then why the hell wouldn't you? It's not ethical to eat animals. Well, every animal on earth eats something, gets eaten by something. People get eaten by other animals too. I mean, we go and admonish the crocodile. Well, that's not ethical. Have you thought about that, Mr. Crocodile? That's not what ethical means. Ethical means living to your nature. That's what the Aristotelian definition of ethical means. What about moral? Well, moral is a judgment decision based on your religion and your values. So that's subjective as well, to an extent. I mean, there aren't going to be many people that disagree that there is a difference between hurting a child and helping a handicapped person across the street. I mean, those aren't. It's not just, oh, it doesn't matter what you do. Of course it does. But I think there's a sense of morality that helps and betters humanity and your society around you and your civilization around you. And doing things that are good to people around you benefits the people around you and benefits you and benefits your species. It can help perpetuate the species. So I think there is an underlying sense of morality there. Eating animals is part of that. You can do it in a nice way and you can treat the animals well, but you do need to, and it's not moral, certainly, to let your children suffer and have them get horrible conditions, not develop properly, make their brain not develop properly, so they're not as healthy and intelligent as they would have been otherwise. That's not moral. That's not ethical. And so this is why we just need to put a stop to this nonsense and not listen to them. But unfortunately, still being pushed out there that you can get everything you want from plants, everything you need. Meat is bad. It causes disease. Completely opposite, just projection. And so unfortunately, it's just people have just been inundated with this nonsense, but it's not true. And you can just point out to your sisters like, hey, look, you're eating these ways, but you are not getting enough nutrients. And so people can say all they want that there's enough nutrients in there, but you are seeing that there's not. Maybe you can try just eating some meat, see how that goes. It will get better. And her iron will get better, and her folate will get better, and her B12 will certainly get better, and she'll get better. She'll get better, and she'll have so many things that have been going wrong. She didn't even realize were going wrong. Will start going right. And then she'll be like, oh, crap. Okay. Yeah, no, that's not the right way to go. And I hope she does. Okay, Dylan Conatster. So that's a new one. I haven't come across that name. Thank you very much, Dylan, for the super chat. Hello, Dr. Chaffee. Which binder would you recommend for someone who has bile acid diarrhea due to a right hemicolectomy? My GI is giving me the option between cholestyramine and cholestyramine. Thanks. I don't actually know the differences between those two products. Unfortunately, they aren't things that I use. I'm not actually even sure that you would actually need one on a carnivore diet, given proper balance of the amount of fat that you're getting. Just for a right hemicolectomy, I don't see how that would change eating on a carnivore diet. Things might get a chance, might not get as much of a chance to dry out and desiccate and dehydrate the stools. You can get a bit more loose stools, but I don't. It's not going to change your absorption of fat at the colonic level, right? Because you do your absorbing in the short intestine, or the small intestine, sorry. And so I don't think that would necessarily need to be done. It depends on what you're experiencing, though. Like the diarrhea might just be more to do with the fact that you just sort of not pulling out all the water, right? Which doesn't mean drink less water, though. You need probably more water because you're not retaining it. And I would just play around with the amount of fat that you're eating and to try to ameliorate that, and certainly get rid of all coffee, tea, any sweetener, magnesium supplements, things like metformin. Just understand that those can cause diarrhea. As far as the medications are concerned, you can always try them, and if they help, that's great. But I don't unfortunately know the differences between those two. So I apologize for that. Because your daddy 92, thank you for the super chat. Quit vaping, lightheadedness was gone. Great. Carnivore 10 months, but had symptoms. Duh, lol. I think it elevated my glucose and A1C. If I cut everything but beef and water, can I fix it? Yeah, you shouldn't raise your blood glucose or A1C if you're just doing meat, salt, and water. If you're extremely stressed, getting poor sleep, not enough sleep, raising your cortisol from other means, then you can raise your blood sugar, and you can potentially raise your A1C. There's another thing too, is that your blood, when you're healthier, can actually live longer. And when you're eating a whole bunch of plant oils and plant sterols, that can actually shorten the lifespan of your red blood cells. And so now you're comparing an average of 2 months, your red blood cells are only living 2 months, 2.5 months, and you're comparing that to numbers for red blood cells living on average 3 months. And so, it's like, oh, well, my HbA1c is this. And then all of a sudden you get healthier, you get rid of all these plant sterols, so it's not mucking with your cholesterol in the cell membrane of your red blood cells. So they're much more pliant and they live longer. They don't get taken out because they're too stiff as early, and they last longer. And all of a sudden these things are living a month longer. They're going to get another month worth of glycation, even if the blood sugar is very low. And so your HbA1c can artificially go up even though your blood sugar didn't change at all, or even your blood sugar went down. So it depends. If you're checking your actual blood sugar and you're checking that on a daily basis, and that's going up, and that corresponds correctly to the rise in HbA1c, okay, well, then you have to start looking at other things, such as, are you really getting rid of everything? Is there any sugar? Is there any sweeteners? Are there any artificial sweeteners in there? Which, I'm sorry, people have gotten derangement of their blood sugar from taking artificial sweeteners and the things that go with the artificial sweeteners. And so, you just want to cut out all of these things, go strict, red meat and water, like you said, like a strict lion diet, and reduce stress and get proper sleep, because those things can raise cortisol. Those things can actually raise blood sugar. Start doing sprinting, chronic cardio, like long distance runs, jogs. That can actually raise cortisol. That can increase your abdominal visceral fat. And that can, also at the same time raise your blood sugar and your HbA1c. So, eating the correct thing is definitely the major part of that. And it can fix that, but you need to do the other things too. You need to make sure that you're getting enough sleep, reducing stress, and exercising anaerobically. If you can, if you're doing a lot of long jogs, you need to cut those out, switch to sprints, and then go from there. And I would expect that, yes, definitely, that would help. So I think this would be the last one, guys. Bishop's Deep Learning, thank you very much for the super chat. Do you ever eat pure fat? Yes, I do. I used to catch my mom eating butter back when we were raised in a Pritikin household. That was Dr. Pritikin's heart healthy diet was just a household name when I grew up. And so we all knew, oh, fat's bad, fat's bad, fat's bad. And then my mom just never bought that. I've spoken to her subsequently. She's like, I never bought that crap. I never believed that for a second. And so we catch her, like every now and then she'd cut off a piece of butter and just sort of, she'd be buttering bread, and then she'd take that and just put it in her mouth. And like one of us was like, Mom! And she's like, oh God. And like gets startled and scared. And we'd be like horrified that she'd be doing that. Then like I was in Australia, they just trim every scrap of fat off of these steaks, which is really appalling to me. So I was adding butter to Scotch filet, which is basically a ribeye with all the fat stripped off around it. So it's just a waste, such a waste. And so I was adding butter to that. I had a knife and sort of cut that off, put that on. There's a bit of butter left on it. And so I was like, do I want to scrape it on there? I'm like, just not enough for that. So I sort of my fingers took it off and looking at it, I'm like, should I eat that? And I was like, might as well. So I put it in my mouth and I was like, it tasted like ice cream. It was just amazing. And I was like, oh God, I guiltily sliced another piece of butter and like ate that. I'm like, oh my God, it's the best thing I've ever eaten in my life. And I had more. My body obviously needed more fat. It needed more nutrients in that fat. It doesn't taste as good now because I'm more consistent with getting the fat in. But yeah, I will eat a chunk of fat. And I actually go to the butcher and get the offcut fat trimmings as well. Often we'll give you them for free. If not, they give it to you very cheap because they normally throw it away. And sometimes they have to pay to get it thrown away. So you're doing them a favor. And you just cut that up into little chunks. You fry that up in the pan, put some salt on it. If you use salt, it tastes amazing. And so, yes, I absolutely eat chunks of fat. It's delicious. So that's from my sister Rosin again. Please, no more super chats. There's a little girl sitting outside the door waiting for her uncle to play with her. Okay, well, I will come out and play with that little girl. And so I will end it there. Thank you, everyone, for coming on. It was great to have a bit more time this time and sort of see everyone and answer questions more fully. That was great. Can't always do that when I'm doing it before work. So going to try to do these again for the next week or two. So I think I can do this for the next 2 weeks. I'll be in Seattle, so I'll try and do these. I'll be doing the same time as before, and we'll see you guys next week. See you guys as well for the premiere this coming Sunday. That'll be 4 or 5 p.m., but it'll go up anyway, 4 or 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so West Coast time in the U.S. And that will be the next new episode out, and I will be doing that as a premiere and chatting with people live there in the text chat. Also, as we watch, people can ask questions as we go. So Thank you all very much. Please show up for the premiere, because that really helps drive the algorithm, get more people out there. If you go there and you like it and you leave a comment and watch it during the premiere, then that tells YouTube this is something worth showing to other people, and that really helps. So appreciate it if you all come to that. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Let's see you later.